as follows, dispensing with further reading. Joint rules adopted. Mr. President, joint rules of the Senate and House Representatives 22-1 is amended to read, dispensing with further reading. Joint rule number 2 adopted. Section 1, joint rules of the Senate and House 14-1M is amended, dispensing with further reading. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk. The following messages are dated January 21, 2025. Message number 108. House Bill number 45, removing otters as protected animals. Ayes 52, noes 8, excused 2, passed the House on third reading. Message number 109. House Bill number 73, recreation safety rock climbing, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 60, excused 2. Message number 110. Mr. President, House Bill number 11, manufacturing, sales, and use tax exemption amendments, passed the House in an amended form. Ayes 55, noes 5, excused 2. Message number 111. Mr. President, House File number 91, eminent domain energy collector systems amendments, failed to pass the House on third reading. Ayes 27, noes 33, excused 2. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Reports from standing committees.
Mr. President, the following reports are dated January 21, 2025. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 80, Abandonment of Water Rights Limitations, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Crago, French, Ide, McEwen, Tolliver, Pearson. Signed, Senator French, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 82, Omnibus Water Bill Planning, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Crago, French, Ide, McEwen, Tolliver, Pearson. Senator French, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 63, State Lands Fencing 2, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Crago, French, Ide, McEwen, and Tolliver, Pearson. Senator French, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Chairman French, do you have a re-referral for me?
Yes, I believe it's Senate File
82,
82.
Omnibus Water Bill Planning by chance?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to refer that to Senate number 2 Appropriations.
Okay.
Committee number 2 Appropriations, please.
Without objections, it is so ordered. Senate File 82, Omnibus Water Bill Planning has been re-referred to Committee number 2 Appropriations. Any other re-referrals while we're at it? Okay. Madam Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Former President Dockstader, make your way back up to your old stomping grounds here. Welcome.
Senate will come to order. Next bill for our consideration, Senate File 49, Tangible Personal Property Index Depreciation. Please read it in.
Senate File 49, Tangible Personal Property Index and Depreciation, an act relating to ad valorem taxation, sponsored by the Revenue Committee. It was referred to Committee number 3, which turned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Ide, McEwen. No, Senators Case and Pappas. Senator McEwen, Chairman.
Chairman McEwen, your pleasure.
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendations that Senate File 49 do pass.
Mr. Chairman, there is a amendment 2, so work that in when you see appropriate.
Yes.
Proceed.
Basically, the premise behind this bill is as we pay tangible personal property taxes, it's depreciated, and it's depreciated over time. And when it gets to 20%, it just stops. And currently gets trended also. So you have an item that's you're paying property tax on that's valued at 20%, and then they trend it to today's dollars. What this bill aims to do is allow you to depreciate the asset down to 0, and then it will fall off the public rolls. The amendment on this bill,
Senate File 49, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 10, delete.
the amendments basically, as I just, I move Standing Committee Bill Number 1, or Amendment Number 1 to Bill Senate File 49. What do I do? Basically, this amendment is the part of the legislation that takes the bill down to 0%. That's actually not in the bill itself. The bill itself gets rid of the trending. I think we should deal with the amendment first, so let's do comments and then further discussion, please.
And further discussion on the minutes. Senator Case.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I would rise to oppose the amendment. I suppose it is potentially divisible, but the part that I oppose is the 20% going down to 0. And this is not what people agreed to about this bill. The 20% floor was to remain in place, and these rules promulgated by the Department of Revenue. But what's going to change is there wasn't going to be any trending up from the 20%. Now, the reason we can't take it to 0 is because these assets are still in service. And they could be big assets, you guys, that are still being used by companies and producing income for the companies. And so this is a violation of the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practices. And if you talk to your oil and gas operators, I think they'll even agree with you that this shouldn't go down to 0 because the asset is still being used. And it provides income and benefits the company. So the kind of compromise was to go down to 20%, but not to trend it up anymore. And that's pretty darn fair. And if you remember last year, we had discussions about this, and I think I recall hearing from our oil and gas operators that the trending up was really onerous and distorted the value of those properties that were in service. But believe me, taking it to 0 would do the same thing. And, you know, we've heard lots of examples of a meat cutter, okay? A meat cutter used in a business. It should go to 0. But if that meat cutter is still used in that business, it's still valuable. It's creating value for the business owner. Now, if you own the meat cutter and you no longer use it in your business, it's just sitting out back, you can just tell the assessor to take it off the tax rolls. Nobody's going to argue with you. It doesn't need to go to zero. And I think the cleanest way, rather than try to divide this amendment, would be just to defeat it and come back. They could bring an amendment on the second part if they wish. And that excluding the property that is valued, that's titled property, Mr. Chairman. I'm not arguing about that.
Further discussion on the amendment. On the amendment, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am opposed to this amendment. The bill is fine. The amendment makes it unpalatable for myself. And it just doesn't make sense that you depreciate something to zero and then no longer tax it if it's still in use. If we did that, so many properties would fall off the list. So many, not properties, but so many assets would fall off the list. The USPP, I won't use the actual term, that the good senator from Fremont County mentioned, does not set a floor, but they discourage going to zero in their standards. And it is, we have it in the DOR rules for a reason. I believe that taking it to zero would be really detrimental to the taxes that we will need to collect. If it's in use, it should be taxed. And I agree with the good senator from across the room that, yes, we shouldn't trend it up. I fully agree with that. But leave it at the 20% floor that we've got, and let's keep taxing these things until they're no longer in use. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment? On the amendment. Chairman McCune, you want to, let's go back up to Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in support of this amendment. This is still burdensome on small business, or any business for that matter. Any tax on personal property, my stance would be to repeal it completely, but I think at some point you should be able to depreciate that down to zero and not get punished for the rest of your life for a piece of personal property that contributes to your business. I think it's good for the consumer. I think it's good for the business, and I think everybody gains by the free market does by getting rid of more taxes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Then we'll go back to the chair. Chairman McCune, you want to wrap it up on the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. When we did the joint interim committee, the Senate committee set this at 0%, and it got amended back up to 20%. So it wasn't our intent to ever have that floor in there. By just changing the trending factors, it offers little or no real property tax relief. We just say, hey, look what we did. We passed a bill that says tangible personal property relief, but we're not really giving them any relief. And I want to give you an example. There are people all over the state here who have saddles that are dated back to 1900, and they're still paying property taxes on them. Do they use them? Do they not? How hard is it to go through there and say, I use this one, not that one, this one? But the real problem I have with this is you never own anything. If it's usable, the government owns it, and you pay them a lease to use it in perpetuity. And it's called tangible personal property tax. You could have a Craftsman wrench. Well, we need our 25 cents for that, or anything else. Even when you look at tax law, you depreciate something out, it's depreciated out. You're not paying taxes on it anymore. So I think if we're actually going to do some relief, we need to let it go down to zero and take it off the rolls. Is it going to cause a haircut? Yes. It will cause some lesser spending, if you will. So I would caution you as you look at this amendment, we kind of need the amendment in there so the bill actually means something. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ready for question on the amendment? Senator Case?
Mr. Chairman, if you have property, first off, residential personal property is exempt. Nobody pays anything on residential. You don't have to list your dining room table or your personal saddle. Commercial property, business personal property is not exempt. But if you do not use it, if it's not useful in your business, even if it's functional, you can talk to your assessor and get it taken off the rolls. Or you can report the form and report that it's been retired. You know, you can do that all the time. If something is used in your business, and that's what we're talking about, stuff that's used in your business that provides you with income, it's taxable. Should it go to zero? No. It shouldn't go to zero because it is providing income. If it's not providing income, then take it off the tax rolls. You can do that. Don't, 20% floor has a purpose. The compromise that was reached in this whole process, and the bill that came out of the joint committee, was to take it down to 20%, but to eliminate the trending factor. That's going to be of huge importance to our industrial folks, oil and gas and mineral industry, and I look forward to implementing that and giving significant tax relief to those folks. So taking it down to zero is bad. Trending, getting rid of trending is good.
Thank you. Ready for the question on the amendment? Senator Craigo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for the committee and for the bringer of the amendment. What exactly will it cost? As I'm looking at the fiscal note, at 20%, there's a reduction in taxes of almost 34 million annually. And so what's the difference between the 20% and the 0% as that relates out statewide?
Chairman McEwen, you want to follow up, and then we'll call for the question?
It'll be around 65 million.
Okay. Ready for the question on the amendment? Question on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay? No. Nays have it.
Division.
Division. All those in favor stand. Seven. All those opposed stand. So 19 no. Amendment fails. Back on the bill. Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. I'm not really big on numbers and revenue, but just trying to get, where did this come from? That you have a business, you buy things to help you run the business, and you're taxed on it when you buy it, and now you're taxed, I don't know, every year, 5 years, whatever, by just using this. It seems like it's an unfair tax. So if someone can explain that to me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Continued discussion. We are on Senate File 49, Tangible Personal
Yeah.
Property Index and Depreciation. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Chairman, Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I don't mean to talk so much, but the good senator deserves an answer to a question.
Yeah.
So property taxation is based on things that you own. In the personal world, it's basically your real estate. We pay property tax on our vehicles, but in the business world, you pay taxes on all the investment that you have on your books to make money with, that's devoted to your business. And it's been in place for a long, long time. The old tax notices used to have questions about saddles and things, and that was part of the equipment that farmers used, and they taxed it. But if the funny thing is, we think of property taxes as being our homes, but business thinks of property taxes as being their equipment, their pipelines, their facilities, their transmission lines, their generation plants, all of these things. And those are important properties, big investments devoted to the business interests, and we tax them. Property tax is the basis for funding local government in Wyoming. It has a very, very long history. It predates excise taxes, it predates severance taxes, so it's kind of the oldest form of taxes. And it came to Wyoming through, it's in our Constitution. I don't know if it was originally in our Constitution, but other states certainly had it even before Wyoming was a state. So it's a very, very long, old form of taxation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, we do. Senator Jones?
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if we have a breakout of the fiscal note for county by county. I'm guessing that this is going to affect some counties a lot more than others.
Okay, any further discussion? Oh, let's take it to Senator French. Chairman McEwen, get ready to wrap this up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Something for everybody to think about. Now, we're talking about equipment, personnel, whatever, that's been slowly going down. But also, most operations, I'm a farmer, are also purchasing newer equipment. Maybe that tractor, that first one I bought was, I think, $7,000. Well, a modern tractor now, $250,000, $300,000 that comes on the rolls. It goes down. You know, things are being replaced at a much higher value, so there's a much higher tax on them. We're talking about things that have towards the end of their life. Well, there's been a whole bunch of things that have come on board that are a much, much higher price. Just something to think about.
Senator McEwen, you want to wrap it up for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would also urge you to vote for the bill itself without the trending in it. That will make a difference. And it's probably about as fair as we're going to get to today. Unfortunately, everybody's going to hear about my meat grinder for 3 more years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ready for the question? Question be called. All those in favor of Senator McEwen's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that to do so with favorable recommendation of Senate File 49. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. This bill has passed. Next bill up for our consideration, Senate File 57. Read it in.
Senate File 57, 911 Service Reporting, an act relating to emergency telephone service sponsored by the Corporations Committee, was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Dockstader, and Landon. Excused, Senator Steinmetz. Senator Case, Chairman.
Senator Case, your pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 57, 911 Service Reporting. And I didn't write anybody's name on this bill.
It's all yours.
I wrote Landon's name on this bill, and I asked that you would call on the fine senator from Natrona County.
You were waiting for someone to stand up. Senator Landon.
Well, you know, Mr. Chairman, I could have hung him out right there. I had my chance, didn't I? Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 57, Senators, is a result of the outstanding work of one of your best committees, the Corporations Committee, during the interim. This is a little bill that requires the reporting of 911 service outages by our providers out across the land. The key provisions in the bill is the fact that it requires our service providers to report equipment failures affecting 911 emergency systems to the Wyoming Public Service Commission under these newly established rules that will be written as a result of this bill. It obligates our governing bodies, on the flip side of the coin, managing all of the 911 revenues, to file a detailed annual statement of gross receipts and expenditures, promoting financial accountability for the money that all of us pay into the 911 system. So just to kind of highlight what this bill is all about, I talked with the coordinator of this system. He did a great job of providing the following. He said, just imagine during an emergency, you dial 911 and the call fails. It won't connect to the dispatch center due to a system outage. Now imagine a 911 dispatch center unaware of the system outage. And so not knowing that someone is in need of 911 services because the call's just not coming into them. So our centers have additional tools that they can use to connect with someone who is in an emergency, but they need to know that the 911 system is not available to those callers. So once they are aware, they can implement those resources, get out around it, and get somebody to your home to take care of you. So this is an important bill, I think, senators, because it's going to make this thing a little bit more transparent, more accountable. And I will say, senators, in our testimony during the interim, we're going to have a lot more considerations coming our way with regard to 911 service in Wyoming. You might remember over the last couple of years, we talked about next gen. There's a lot of technological advances that have taken place, and we still have parts of our state that struggle on this front. So this is just the beginning of having the ability to at least know when these outages are occurring, how often they're occurring, and allowing our dispatch centers then to, when they know something, they can get around it and get help where it needs to go. So I'll be glad to visit any more about 911 services or about the bill, but hope you'll support it.
Further discussion on Senate File 57, 911 service reporting. Any further discussion? Ready for the question?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion that the committee, when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 57. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Senate File 57 has passed, Committee of the Whole. Next bill up for our consideration. Senate File 90, read it in.
Senate File 90, Youth Organizations in Schools, an act relating to education, sponsored by Senator Crum, was referred to Committee Number 4, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Brennan, Olson, Schuler, and Scott. No, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Schuler. Your pleasure, and also note that there is an amendment in there. Give us some direction on that along the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 90 do pass. If you would please go ahead and read the Standing Committee amendment
Please
in.
read in the amendment.
Senate File 90, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 5, delete.
Senator, do you want to read it? Do you want to move the amendment?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
We'll dispense with the amendment first.
Okay.
And then we'll let-
The amendment's moved. Go ahead.
Yes. The amendment is fairly simple. I will probably let the bringer of the bill talk a little bit more about it. Unless you'd like to do that, you kind of give me the look there. Do you want to do it?
Senator Crum, what's
Actually,
your choice?
Let's do that. Let's let Senator Crum.
Senator Crum, it's
Yeah.
all yours, sir. You're on the amendment. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Schuler. This is a great bill for our youth. What it does, it allows youth.
You're on the amendment, though, right now.
On the amendment?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, just on the amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great bill. The amendments, as we get into the amendments, I'd first like to make a motion to divide the amendment.
Oh,
request.
you do this to me. Okay,
What I'd like to do is to divide the amendment into page 2, line 5, 6, and 7. And then the second part of it, division would be page 3, line 14 to 19, and line 21.
okay. Yeah, repeat that,
Division 1.
okay. Repeat that division for me one more time, and then we'll come back to you, Senator Bonner.
Mr. Chairman, the division would be on the amendment to divide lines 1 through 6 from the balance, lines 7 through 11.
Okay. Divisible, Senator Bonner, you want to comment on that? Just a minute, there you are.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The good senator from Albany County did what we typically do at the second time, where you refer to the line number within the amendment instead of the references to the page and line number within the bill. So appreciate the self-correction there.
Okay, back on you, Senator Crum.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of amendment.
Explain what you're doing with the First Amendment. Division 1,
1 through 6. 1 through 6. I would ask for approval of line 1 through 6.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of Division 1 of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 90, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Division 1 approved. You want to go to Division 2?
Yes, Division 2, I'm against Division 2 of the amendment, and let me tell you why. Division 2 reads as follows. Nothing in this paragraph will require a school district that allows a patriotic organization to speak with or distribute information material to a student under this paragraph to provide equal access to an organization that is not designated as a patriotic organization. Patriotic organizations, as spelled out in the bill, are from Title 36 of the U.S. Code and are referred to in this bill, which we'll talk about later. Non-patriotic organizations, the school would then still have the ability to allow non-patriotic organization, but it allows them with this section to say no. So let's say, make up something wild, the guys in the white hoods come in and ask to come in and present to our children. The school district could say, no, that's inappropriate, and under state law, they would be okay to do that. Question came up in committee about whether this was constitutional. Yes, it is, in my opinion, constitutional. I've talked to, this language came straight from the state of Florida, where they had a very similar bill. It has been tested for constitutionality and was said it was okay. I have talked to the staff attorneys here with LSO and our staff attorneys. They say that it doesn't appear to be unconstitutional, while anybody could challenge constitutionality at any time. It doesn't appear unconstitutional. So I would recommend defeat of the amendment, removing this from the bill. I think it's an important part of the bill to allow school districts and to say no to organizations, and under state law, they're allowed to do that for organizations that would not be beneficial to our children per the local school district.
Question from the sponsor is a no vote on this. Any further discussion? And just a reminder, caution on the names. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Division 2 has failed. We are back on the bill. Senator Crum, do you want to take us through the bill?
Yes, sir. Clarification, Mr. Chair. So that was
defeated,
and it's back in the bill then?
Yeah.
Is correct. Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So this bill, what it does is it allows patriotic organizations for youth to come into the school. Right now we have, I've been contacted by different school districts from around the state and just serving different youth organizations that have come up and said, I can't come in and present. Those organizations range from Girl Scouts to Boy Scouts to I had a 4-H group approach me that the school district wouldn't allow them to come in, let's say at an open house or during assembly to say, hey, after school we have these activities, Cub Scouts, where your students can learn character, leadership development, learn how to do hard work, how to fail, how to succeed, how to work with teamwork. Some school districts have kept those type of organizations from presenting their wares. It's not to say that the school district has to support them or make a student attend one of these. It's just saying these organizations can come into the school, present their wares, set up, usually maybe at a open house, set up a card table with some brochures and talk to parents and families about attending a Cub Scout meeting or a 4-H club meeting. And this bill's very simple. It just says, allow them to attend at your convenience and present their things. I really believe it's important for youth to have options after school rather than just going home and playing Xbox and those type of things. It gives parents and families a choice to do something productive to build character and leadership in youth. That's what this bill's about.
Okay, we are on Senate File 90, Youth Organizations in Schools. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Appreciate the good sponsor bringing this bill. I'm just curious about what the heartburn was and why we carved out the ability of an organization like was described from ever going in the classroom. What was I'd like to hear that conversation that took place, I think must have in committee. Thank you.
Senator Crum, collect these. Let's make sure we got further questions. Senator Rothfuss, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It doesn't preclude them from doing it. It just doesn't allow, or it doesn't require an allowance that they do it. So an in-classroom setting during instruction time is an awful lot of commitment that we're forcing on a school district to allow. You might think of having an auditorium full of 100 students that could hear from one of these organizations in a common setting. That's not instructional time, that's not classroom setting, that might be during recess, that might be during lunch, which is a reasonable accommodation and would probably be the more efficient use of time. But ensuring that it's during classroom time, that means otherwise your students would be studying math or reading. We're going to pause that for an hour, and we're going to bring into a class of 15, because it's in a classroom setting was the original language. We're going to bring in that organization to talk to 20 students, this class. Then we're going to go over and we're going to do this class. So this is a thou shalt. This isn't a may, this is a thou shalt. So the school district is already willing, and if they're willing, they're able to bring them into the classroom during instruction time. And we just, as we talked it through, thought, maybe we should have a limit on how much we're pushing through the thou shalt.
Okay, let's keep going. Then Senator Ide, and then back to Senator Schuler. Go ahead, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support this bill. I think this is a good bill. The question I have to the bringer is the references to federal statutes as far as patriotism goes at the very end of the document here, very end of the bill. Is that necessary, or could you give me some reasoning behind that? Thank you.
Senator Crum, stand ready, but first let's go back to Chairman Schuler. Hang on, Senator Crum, I appreciate your enthusiasm. Go ahead, Chairman Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think, we did have some discussion on, back to page 2 on the amendment. There was some angst about whether or not school districts would have to allow this during instructional time. And I do think the language is permissive, not thou shalt, really. If you take a look at line 4, it says allow a representative of a patriotic organization the opportunity. And it could be during school hours or instructional time and instructional time. I would assume that some school districts would probably do it during lunch or even maybe before school or after school, but it does allow them to do it. It doesn't say you shall do it during instructional time. So I think it is a little bit permissive. And so, and the other thing is, I might be able to answer the question from the good senator from Casper. When you look at the code, the US Code 36, Title 36, those organizations were actually specifically allowed. And so it would be your 4-H, your Boy Scouts, your Girl Scouts, and those kinds of things. Whereas if you didn't go with the title, then that's where I think you open the can of worms, where anybody and their dog could come in and say, hey, we want to do a presentation on, we've got a Wiccan group that we want to get together or whatever. So I think it does make it a little bit more specific, and I think it makes the bill good the way it is. And like I said, I think it's a good bill. I think what we're seeing around the country is our students are not joining Boy Scouts like they used to, Girl Scouts, 4-H, a lot of these other organizations that were actually mentioned in Title 36 in this bill. They're spending their time on their phones. So I think, socially, it really helps them to get involved in some of these activities that are more patriotic, and maybe they'll appreciate our country a little bit more than they do now. So I'm in support of the bill.
Okay, let's go over to Senator Pearson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the intent of this bill. I do, but I struggle with the definition of patriotic, because in the last 4 years, a lot of these patriotic organizations have gone woke. And so I love the intent. I love the intent. And when I first read the bill, I love the intent. But I think that if we are going to pass this, we have to have clear definition of what these organizations are, because I can't support it if we're just going to lump sum everything in there when we clearly have seen what has gone on in our country over the last 4 years. So, thank you.
Further discussion, Senator Crum, back to you. You got a little ground support from your chair along the way. Do you want to wrap it up here for us?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate our good senator from the western part of the state. Patriotic is defined in Title 36 of the U.S. Code, and these organizations are specifically out there. I'm not going to make a decision about what an organization does or not. I'm going off of Title 36. I think it's good for any student to get involved in something, and there's nothing wrong with any student standing up and saying Pledge of Allegiance and being able to work and develop character development. So I'm strongly in favor of this bill and would recommend the group support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready for the question? Question called. All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 90. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Senate File 90 is passed the committee of the whole. Next bill up for our consideration is Senate File 19. Please read it in.
Senate File 19, Impact Assistance Payments, Maximum Percentages and Review, an act relating to industrial development and siting, sponsored by the Minerals Committee. It was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Cooper, Jones, Nethercott, and Rothfuss. Senator Anderson, Chairman.
Senator Cooper, you're up to explain, and also you give us some instruction on your amendment along the way. Go ahead, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 19. And here to explain this simple little bill is our very own High Plains drifter, Senator Rothfuss.
Interesting description. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and what a rousing introduction. Mr. Chairman, Senate File 19 was the work of the Minerals Committee during the interim, and it relates to impact assistance payments through our industrial siting. So impact assistance payments are a portion of the sales and use tax that's paid on large projects that can stick to the communities as a reimbursement of the state's portion. So Senate, recall that 2.76% of the 4% of sales and use goes to the state. For large projects through the industrial siting process, if those projects are over $271 million in value, they will go through the industrial siting process, and some portion of that 2.76% can go back to the community for needs for development by that community to accommodate the program. We've had over 80 instances of that since the 70s when this project was put in place. A few years ago, Mr. Chairman, we amended the percentage where, rather than allowing the Industrial Siting Commission to determine on a fact basis what was needed up to a maximum of 2.76%, we put in place a required caps so that from 0 through $350 million, or actually $271 million through $350 million, it would be capped at 2.25%. But in statute allows for the Industrial Siting Commission to make special recommendation up to 2.76% if they have special findings. For mid-sized projects from $350 million to $800 million in value, the cap is 2%. And for those large projects over $850 million, the cap is 1.5%. So that was put into statute about 3 years ago. There was some concern that depending on the nature of the project, it might require for large projects going over those caps. And so there was a request to have a process for appeal, effectively, if the cap was going to go higher. And that's what we worked on in the interim, was that process for appeal. This legislation provides a venue there then for the SLIB board to consider an appeal for a higher percentage rate if the recommendation of the Industrial Siting Committee is higher than the statutory cap. And I'll walk through a little bit about how that works. It would not, under any circumstance, go above the 2.76%. I'll note that since this deals with sales and use tax, that you'll see that we basically have a bill that's twice as long as it otherwise would be. We've got the sales tax amendments, and then we've got a carbon copy over in the use tax side of things. So that's why the bill is as long as it is. I'm only going to go through one set of changes and just recognize they're identical elsewhere. So as we get to page 5, we see the specifics of the accommodation that we'll describe in detail in a later section, that for facilities with total estimated materials costs exceeding $350 million, the council may increase the maximum allowable percentage to not more than 2.76%. Subject to, then going to page 9, a process where the council can include specific findings that these funds would be insufficient if they were capped as shown in statute, again, the 2% or the 1.5%. If they do that, they'll make a recommendation of an alternative percentage to the SLIB board. So for example, if the statutory cap were 1.5% and they said, no, we think there needs to be 1.8%, they would make that recommendation to the SLIB board. The SLIB board then, as you see on page 8 going on to page 9, would have the opportunity to accept all of the findings of the commission, the Industrial Siting Commission, but not take any new testimony. And the reason we set it up that way is we didn't want this to turn into a second circus, right? There's a lot of work that goes into the industrial siting process, a tremendous amount of hearings, and we didn't want that process to start over again and slow the project down. So the SLIB board takes in the testimony up to that point and then considers it on a fact basis and can do one of 3 things: approve the proposed percentage increase, deny it, or modify it. And then, as it says in statute, they can modify it anywhere up to 2.76%. This is going to be the subject of the first portion of the amendment. So at this point, I'd like to have the amendment read in.
Please read it in.
Senate File 19, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 9, line 18, delete.
Senator, do you want to move the amendment?
I sure do. I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 19 and ask the body's favorable consideration.
All those in favor say aye. This is an amendment?
Nope, I just moved it.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, that's all right.
I'm rushing.
So to describe it a little bit, that C paragraph, the intent when we worked on this in the interim was to allow the SLIB board to change it anywhere between the recommendation of the Industrial Siting Commission and the statutory number. So that's what the first part of the amendment would do. It would strike 2.76% and replace it with the percentage that the council proposed. Therefore, in the example I said, where if statute was a limit of 1.5%, and the Industrial Siting Commission recommended 1.8%, they could technically choose any number between 1.5 and 1.8. So that's the first subject, and I'll get to the second subject of the amendment in a moment as we move on. Romanet 3 is that the council shall authorize payments at the statutory amount immediately so as not to delay the distribution of those payments and waiting for the Industrial Siting Commission. And then Romanet 4 indicates that if there is an approval, that the future payments will account for the increase and ensure that the difference is made up. Romanet 5 indicates that the decision of the State Loan and Investment Board to approve, deny, or modify shall not be subject to further review by the Industrial Siting Council. And then there's additional language, or subject to any judicial review. That was of concern to the Minerals Committee, that specific phrase, or subject to any judicial review. There would only be very limited circumstances where there would be a possibility for that. That would be communities actually appealing the decision through a judicial process. And the Minerals Committee decided that we wanted to strike or subject to any judicial review. Mr. Chairman, that's the subject then of the second part of the Standing Committee amendment. So it does two things, removes that percentage cap and then removes or subject to any judicial review. And the amendment does those things twice because it's in two different places. That is effectively what the bill does. We have conforming language thereafter, and then we have a repeat of it.
Let's come back
in
and
the
see if
second
there's any
portion.
discussion on the amendment.
So, Mr. Chairman, with that, Mr. Chairman, my apologies.
Let's have some, see if there's any discussion on the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, that was what I was going to get to, was basically that's the bill, was what I was going to say.
Oh.
And now I'd be happy to answer any questions on the amendment.
Okay.
And if there aren't any, I'd call for the question.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Question being called. All those in favor of the amendment? This is Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 19. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Your amendment has passed. Now back on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions on the bill.
We are on the bill now. Discussion on the bill. Discussion on the bill. Go ahead, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the detailed explanation of what the bill would change, but I was hoping for a little bit more discussion about what the need for the change is. We're no strangers to this process in Commerce and Natrona counties, and it seems like there's plenty of opportunities for local redistribution in the process. So just wondering what the testimony was in the interim that led to this bill draft to begin with.
Senator Rothfuss, let's wait and see. Any more discussion or questions? Any more discussions? We're on Senate File 19. Back to you, Senator Rothfuss.
Mr. Chairman, it comes down to some concerns that we had when we were actually setting up the initial caps. The idea that a project impact or unabated impact is correlated to the cost of the project is a little bit naive. You have projects that might occur in this neck of the woods that could be billion-dollar projects, and the community is ready for billion-dollar projects. Data centers, a good example. This particular community can absorb some additional data centers without having to hire a lot more personnel or buy any brand new fire trucks because they already have accommodation in place. Then you might have other communities, some of our smaller communities around the state, where any substantial $250 million project or $500 million project is going to lead to an awful lot of needs by the community. So that was where the pushback came from, and I think there was some concern, particularly in the southwest part of the state, that they had some projects on the horizon that might not be appropriately accommodated by the percentages that were hardwired in statute just a few years ago. And that was contentious then. When that was being passed, it was contentious at the time that we would put those caps on. So this is trying to come back and respond. We may have reacted too much by putting the caps on before. There was a request by a number of our counties, and certainly the County Commissioners Association of the state, requesting that some process exist in case we got it wrong. And this is the process that we came up with during the interim.
Okay, further discussion? Ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Cooper's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 19, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Senate File 19 has passed the committee of the whole. Next bill up for consideration, Senate File 56, read it in.
Senate File 56, providing false information to registered agents, an act relating to corporations, partnerships, and associations, sponsored by the Corporations Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Dockstader, Landon, and Steinmetz. Senator Case, Chairman.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 56, providing false information to registered agents. And this one clearly belongs in the court of the fine senator from Natrona County.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to bring you Senate File 56, providing false information to registered agents. Fellow senators, this comes out of the interim as well, work that has been going on under the direction of our Secretary of State, and he and his staff have been working hard to drill down and tackle fraud in our business filings within the Secretary of State. Business entities, as you may or may not know, often employ a registered agent, which that agent is required to provide contact information and whatever. What this bill does is give the Secretary of State another tool to, when fraud is identified, for example, if that business entity provided false information to that commercial agent, then it gives the Secretary of State the tool to take on that fraud. During an audit, for example, of a commercial registered agent, if the Secretary of State determines that that entity has filed false or fraudulent information to the registered agent, or if the office is notified by the registered agent that a business entity has filed false or fraudulent information, this bill would give the Secretary of State the power to dissolve that business. So that is really the purpose of the bill. It is 8 pages long, but senators, that is just mirror language. If you notice, beginning on page 2, that language allows for domestic for-profit corporations. If you go to page 3, we talk about foreign for-profit corporations. Beginning on page 4, domestic nonprofit, and then, of course, foreign nonprofit. Beginning on page 6, it allows the authority for limited liability companies, and beginning on page 7, allows for the authority for statutory foundations. Again, fellow senators, this is an opportunity for the Secretary of State to have the power to go in there and clean up some of these corporate filings that may have been fraudulent. And so I hope you'll support the bill. That office has put in quite a bit of work on this front. This isn't the only one you'll see. The Corporations Committee took up several on this front. I commend the bill to you. Thank you.
Thank you. We are on Senate File 56, providing false information to registered agents. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 56. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Senate File 56 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Senator Landon, switch me out for just a moment.
Okay, the next bill for our consideration, Senate File 59. Would the reading clerk please read the Senate file?
Senate File 59, Registered Agents Release of Records. an act relating to registered offices and agents sponsored by the Corporations Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Dockstader, Landon, and Steinmetz. Senator Case, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the Senate file. What's your pleasure, Senator Case?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with a due pass. Registered agents release of records. For an explanation of the bill, I would yield to the fine senator from the Star Valley.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bring you a registered agents release of records, Senate File 59. Members of the Senate, this bill permits the Secretary of State to release confidential information maintained by registered agents to specific entities under controlled circumstances. Essentially, it allows confidential information to go out to the county assessors or treasurers for official business or to law enforcement and court subpoenas or court subpoenas in some cases. Essentially making sure that it goes out to the right sources. It maintains confidentiality for records obtained by county officials, permitting release only under court-ordered subpoenas or criminal investigations. Again, we are on the forefront of taking care and addressing fraud. Bringing the bill and go to page 2 where the change comes. It's whether it's released to a county assessor or county treasurer, or with subpoenas or to law enforcement. Mr. Chairman, that's the basis of the bill. Ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Senator Dockstader. Questions on the bill? Any questions on Senate File 59? Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, I might just give a small amount of background, if it's okay, if we're not in a big hurry about where this bill came from. We have a great assessor up in Fremont County. She does a fabulous job. And she came to took the opportunity to come to our meeting that we held in my hometown during the summer. It's the first of our interim meetings. And she had an astounding story to tell, Mr. Chairman. Our mouths fell open, let me tell you. So she's very diligent, and what she had been doing was going through the filings down at the Secretary of State's office for the new companies that filed, and if they listed a Fremont County address, she was on it. And she sent them a letter. And she'd say, well, you know, and it kind of goes back to business, you know, what kind of property a business might have and employ in my county. And so she sent out a bunch of these letters, and it was sort of like kicking a big beehive, Mr. Chairman. A lot of those letters went to elderly people. They went to vacant lots. One of the vacant lots belonged to me. And it showed that by mistake or planning, a lot of places in Fremont County were being listed as either the registered agent or the place of business of new corporations filing in Wyoming. Well, she was concerned, and she came and talked to our committee, and it made the news in a couple of places. It turns out this probably is happening all around the state, and she was just diligent and picked it up. But they are just tragic stories. An 89-year-old woman is getting pestered with mail, not just from our county assessor, but other entities looking for the business that's supposedly located at her residence. Now, this was new to everybody. It was new to the Secretary of State's office, I think, and new to us. And so, but the Secretary of State's office very quickly addressed it in some ways and came up with a way that people could sign an affidavit saying this business isn't at my location. And the Secretary of State's office could begin the process of administrative dissolution. Sort of like that copyright bill we had the other day, if you think about it. And that's fine, that works out. But the trouble is, 89-year-old woman's not gonna sign an affidavit and work back and forth with the Secretary of State's office to get that cleared up. There were other legitimate businesses that had this happen to them. And so we formed a fraud working group in our joint corporations. And there's another member of that fraud working group sitting here who happened to be the chairman on the other side during the joint interim. And together we came up with a series of bills, some of which you've already heard and some you're going to hear. This is one where we thought it might make things a little easier here, because our assessor had then reached out to where these companies said their registered agent was. If they said they had a business location in Fremont County, then she reached out to the registered agents and trying to find the owner, where the property was, what's going on. And many times she was told, we don't have to give you that information. Well, that's what set this off. So we originally drafted a bill that had that assessors and treasurers would have access to the information. Well, to tell you the truth, that probably, it just became more palatable and acceptable to the Secretary of State's office to have a bill where these folks would make a request to the Secretary of State's office and they would get the information. That's exactly how it works under the law now. The Secretary of State can contact a registered agent to find out who the principal people in a business are, et cetera, for purpose of law enforcement. But this would also be for our tax administrators. So I think this is where the bill came out. I think the committee was happy with it. I don't think everybody's happy with it, but I don't understand why. Because I'll tell you what, only our assessors in these counties know the local people and the treasurers. They know that Mrs. Jones couldn't possibly have these businesses here, and there's something going on. They know that the Alleys have this construction business, that's a made-up name, but they don't have ABC Enterprises, and that's not that location. There's something fishy. We don't know that here in Cheyenne. Nobody knows that. We'll just keep sending out notices. But they know at home, and they can help these people that are our constituents too. I think this is a really great bill, great balance. I'm proud of everybody on the fraud working group, proud of my co-chairman, who's now just a freshman again, but I think this came out good, and I hope you'll support it.
Thank you, Senator Case, very helpful. Anything else on Senate File 59? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm surprised there wasn't more pushback on it, honestly, based on the fact that it definitely takes a big step, and maybe it's the right step, but it definitely takes a big step in allowing a broader access to information that has been held very confidential in the past, where it was a challenge to get the contact information for corporations, and it was held to a standard of needing law enforcement action and criminal investigation. So you basically needed a subpoena. So we're going from a time when you needed a subpoena for a law enforcement action to honestly a simple request for business purposes. And there's no details on the business purpose has to be towards the action of fighting fraud or anything along those lines. It's for a business purpose. A county assessor or a county treasurer can have seemingly all the information. So, I'd like to hear a little bit more about, were there concerns? What were the concerns? The good senator said that not everybody liked this. I'd like to learn a little bit more. Was there anyone on the committee that had concerns about this? And again, maybe this is the right choice, but I don't know. I hope everybody appreciates how significant of a change this is. That we are we're the second largest, I think, by revenue, so to speak, filing state in the country for corporations. Part of that is based on a deep respect for privacy rights of corporations in the state of Wyoming. And this change, where the county assessor, and it actually probably should say local county assessor, I don't know if it does, but a county assessor can make that request, is a substantial change to the business practices. Is there any expectation that this might affect business filings or the nature of Wyoming's privacy with respect to our corporate records?
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, let's get a couple things straight. Mr. Chairman, we do have one form of corporations in Wyoming that basically has anonymity among the officers. That's the limited liability company, LLC. But under Wyoming law, an LLC has to have a registered agent in Wyoming. And that registered agent has to provide to the Secretary of State's office the names of the people that own that business. And the law actually says the Secretary of the State may release any such confidential information only pursuant to court order, a court order subpoena, or a bona fide law enforcement agency for use in a criminal investigation. So the Secretary of State's office has to keep that close, but they know that information from that registered agent. Now, let me make a note here. Any other form of business in Wyoming that uses our corporate laws, their officers are disclosed. I don't have an LLC. I have a C Corp. You can look up on the Secretary of State's website. You can see my name and other people that are officers in my business. Okay? You can see where I claim to do business and what my address is. And the reason limited liability companies enjoy this extra bit of anonymity. It's a two-edged sword. It definitely has made us a popular place to do business in the country. But it's come with its challenges on occasion. You can recall the special circumstance where we had news reports. Well, there was one about a country in South America that got this little canal that we're going to take over again. That was called Particular Papers, I think, was the name of that first expose, that maybe there was some things going wrong in Wyoming. There's also been more recent things about something called the cowboy cocktail. I'm all for cocktails, I will say that right now, but this one is not so good because this is a situation where perfectly legitimate organizations called trusts, which don't have to file in Wyoming, Mr. Chairman. We can form a trust within ourselves and we don't have to register anything. But if that trust uses it, then forms an LLC and owns the LLC, and then the LLC owns assets either in Wyoming or elsewhere in the country or elsewhere in the world, there can be a point where that anonymity, no one knows what the trust is about. There's a registered agent on the trust, or on the LLC presumably, but it goes back to a trust that we don't know anything about. There's been some concern about that situation. All right. The information that would be released to my good colleague from across the gangplank would be that this is no different than any other information that would be released to law enforcement with a subpoena, and it is a may, not a shall. The Secretary of State's office is not compelled to release the information. That may stands, but it has to be a written application by a county assessor or a county treasurer to obtain the information for official business. What's their official business? Assessing taxes, providing notice. Any records obtained by a county assessor or county treasurer pursuant to this subsection shall be held confidential, and provided that the county assessor or county treasurer may release such confidential information only pursuant to a court order, subpoena, or to a bona fide law enforcement agency for use in a criminal investigation. That restriction on how they release information is the same one that the Secretary of State's under, Mr. Chairman. So what it says is, you know what? These taxing authorities have a legitimate reason to try to find out about these properties supposedly located in their counties. So the Secretary of State's office may assist them to do so, doesn't have to. And if they receive the information, it has to be held absolutely confidential by the same standards that the Secretary of State office holds. Now, the only ownership information that is not public in Wyoming, back again, is the limited liability companies, Mr. Chairman. Everything else is a public filing in your annual reports. I'll do my best to answer any questions, and thank you very much. I hope you'll support this bill.
Thank you, Senator Case. Anything else on Senate File 59? Senator Dockstader.
The only thing I'd add to that, my colleague from High Plains, he's right, it is a big step. It's a big step to addressing fraud, which this committee has done an excellent job putting together a series of bills that will do that. Tightens up our system, and it supports our local elected officials, our assessor and county treasurer, or our county assessor and our county treasurer. Ask for your support, call for the question.
All those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 59, say aye. Any opposed, no. Senate File 59 has passed committee of the whole. Senator Dockstader.
Next bill up for our consideration, Senate File 26, please read it in.
Senate File 26, Protection of Military Equipment, an act relating to crimes and offenses, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Brennan, Cooper, and Pappas. Excused, Senator Kolb. Senator Pappas, Chairman.
Heard the reading of the bill? Senator Pappas, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that I do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 26. And for explanation of this bill,
Someone is ready to stand for Senator Pappas.
Yeah, I forgot who I signed.
Looks like Senator Pappas, you may have this.
I think I will take this.
Okay. Pause for just a second.
Just one moment. I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so Senate File 26, Protection of Military Equipment, was a product of your interim committee, Joint Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee. Basically, this bill is fairly simple, straightforward. It allows for state security officers, immunity for state security officers. Right now, the meat of the bill, if you look at it on page 2, line 19, state security officers means a person employed by the military department whose primary duties include being armed and securing military assets controlled by the military department. So we have others who are securing military assets, active duty people, people in certain titles of the military. However, our state security officers do not have that immunity. And that basically, when this bill originally was drafted, they were just missed. Okay, so all this is doing is allowing for the same protection that we give all the other folks that are protecting these military assets. We're doing the same thing for state security officers. So it's pretty straightforward. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad.
Questions for Chairman Pappas? Questions? Questions? Ready for the question? All those in favor? All those in favor of Senator Pappas' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 26. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Senate File 26 is passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill up for consideration is Senate File 27. Read it in.
Senate File 27, Wyoming National Guard Member Referral Amendments, an act relating to Defense Forces and Affairs, sponsored by the Transportation Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Brennan, Cooper, and Pappas. Excused, Senator Cole. Senator Pappas, Chairman.
Senator Pappas, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move, when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that I do so with a recommendation that Senate File 27, Wyoming National Guard Member Referral Amendments do pass. And for an explanation of this bill, I ask you to call on Senator Cooper.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 27, Wyoming National Guard Member Referral Amendments. What this actually does, it's pretty simple. Currently there's a program out there where members of the Guard can recruit other new recruits, and they get a referral bonus. In an effort to expand that, this bill broadens the people that are allowed to do the recruiting and receive that bonus to include military retirees, current Wyoming Military Department employees, including state employees, and new enlistment prospects. The bonus would stay the same, $500. So basically all it does is expand the number of people that can fall into this referral process. So as you go through the bill, as it goes through the different sections, it adds that additional language for these for this broadened referral group, and that's the whole bill. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Questions or comment on Senate File 27? Being none, are you ready? Oh, there you go. Senator Hicks.
Just curious, how much is the compensation, Mr. Chairman, for the referral on this? Do we know what that is? Because when I looked at the fiscal impact, there's nothing there. So just curious.
Hold up, Senator Cooper. We're going to collect another one for you. Senator Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I would like to know where the funding is coming from and what is it like year for the program currently.
Further questions for Senator Cooper before we go back? Okay, Senator Cooper, to wrap it up for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The dollar amount is $500 per referral. It comes from the same program where the referrals are coming from now. I'm not sure we actually discussed that. Perhaps the chairman can.
Got some backup here from Senator Pappas. Just hold for a minute. Senator Pappas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The funding, there's no appropriation in this bill because the program is already in place and the program has been funded. So it has its money already. So the referral program just, right now it's only a limited set of people, so we are just allowing retirees and other people to also participate in the program, but there's no additional funding. The funding that we've appropriated, we're not asking for more. We're asking to be able to dispense that funding to other people so that we can get a broader section of people being able to refer the recruits to the Wyoming Military Department, but no additional funding.
Senator Cooper, want to follow up? Let's go back to Senator Larson real quick. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I quite got all the answer. How much is annually right now? Do you have 20 referrals, or do you really know, I guess?
Let's, before we go back, any further questions? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looks like, according to our committee materials, Army National Guard, as of May of last year, had 29. Air Guard had 17. That's a total of 46 new recruits. That's 1.6 increase in end strength.
Senator Larson, you get your answer then. Okay, good. Let's go back to Senator Cooper. Do you have anything else to say, sir? All right, question being called. All those in favor of Senator Pappas's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that to do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 27. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Senate File 27 is passed. The committee of the whole. Next bill up for consideration is Senate File 99.
Senate File 99, Game and Fish Property Tax Exemption, an act relating to taxation and revenue sponsored by the Travel Committee, was referred to Committee Number 6, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Hicks, Jones, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, chairman. Was re-referred to Committee Number 2, which referred to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Driscoll, Guru, Larson, Salazar, and Smith. Senator Salazar, chairman.
Ooh, Senator Landon, what is your pleasure on this?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a do pass recommendation on Senate File 99. This one caught me a little unawares.
Noticed you were
I find
scrambling
myself
there.
in similar territory to my fellow chairman over in the other corner. I can't say that I remember if I gave this bill to somebody or not, but
Somebody want to stand to help out our senator?
it's looking like I'm going to get to walk you through this bill.
It's all yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This Game and Fish Property Tax Exemption Bill, Senate File 99, Senators, again, is the work of your Joint Travel Committee during the interim. This essentially is a bill that would exempt much of the property owned by the Game and Fish Department from paying taxes to the state of Wyoming. At a 30,000-foot view, Senators, it kind of makes sense when you think about it. We have asked over these past several years, sportsmen from across the state and country and around the world to support our Game and Fish Department with their dollars that they spend on fishing licenses and hunting licenses. The sportsmen, we ask an awful lot out of. And so the resources that they provide through the purchase of those licenses, when you think about it, do we want that revenue to be coming back to the state of Wyoming in taxes? Or do we want it going to fisheries and wildlife management? And that's the issue taken up by the Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Committee over the interim, and the result is this bill. Mr. Chairman, this bill will result in an expenditure decrease in Game and Fish Commission funds. The total expenditure decrease in funds that they would be paying in those taxes, $540,000 a year. That's why this bill was re-referred because of that fiscal impact. I re-referred that bill to our appropriations colleagues, and they took up the bill, and I don't know if the chairman of that committee would like to opine at all on the bill, but it was seen by the Appropriations Committee.
Appropriations,
Game and Fish
Mr.
property.
Vice President, do you want to weigh in at this point, or? Okay, it's all yours, Senator.
Okay, if I'll keep it, that actually gets through the gist of the bill, Senators. There is some property, particularly property that is used for the feeding of elk, for example, agricultural lands that will continue to pay the taxes. What we're primarily talking about is residential. Again, you think about our game wardens out across the state. They actually live in homes that are open 24 hours a day. I have one of our finest that lives just down the street from me up in my neck of the woods, and everybody knows that that's our game warden who lives there, and I drive by at pretty much all hours of the night and the morning, and there are people parked there. So there's a lot of legitimacy for us to consider this policy choice. For me, it was pretty easy because of what I said to begin this conversation. Do we want those dollars going to pay the taxes to the state of Wyoming, or do we want them better used in fisheries and wildlife management? Members of the committee who sat through the interim may want to
to join in, but thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's the gist of the bill.
Thank you. We are on Senate File 99, Game and Fish Property Tax Exemption. Any further discussion? Oh, there you are, Senator Schuler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the big thing here, I think, honestly, was we start talking about some of the state agencies that are not paying those same taxes, for instance, YDOT. And obviously, if you've got a snowplow driver that lives in Jackson, you don't want them having to pay taxes on their home. But the difference is really, as the good chairman said, is that our game and fish guys and gals they have to pretty much be available 24 hours a day. I see it in my corner of the state all the time too. Those game and fish people, they get called on all the time. So obviously, with the new issue that's kind of come to the forefront with the Supreme Court, this issue kind of came up because their homes are being used for a government purpose. They're having people bring animals into their yard and saying, hey, can you check this one? I know, for instance, there was a moose that was in our neighborhood that was, creating all kinds of problems. I'm sure it was sick, probably had some type of disease, and the neighbors all got wound up, and of course, the local policemen were busy, and so, it was the game warden's job to come out and take care of it, and you just expect them to be able to do that. And so it just made total sense that this property tax exemption came up. And not only that, as we have taken the game and fish, folks off the general part of our budget, they're getting really closer with their revenues and their spending issues. It's getting very close. And so I think anything we can do to try and help them out, and it makes sense. It's not just to help them out, but to understand that these game and fish people are being called on 24/7 in many parts of the state. So I certainly am in favor of this and hope you'll vote for it as well.
Okay, further discussion? Being none? Oops, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I guess we come to the crux of this. This is primarily about employee housing for the game and fish, not paying taxes there. Is that what we're mostly talking about?
Hold that question, and we'll go to Senator Rothfuss, and then we'll take it back to...
And then I would have further comment.
Oh, okay. Senator Rothfuss, your comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do understand the concern of the fact that, we have some agencies, some government entities paying taxes on property, real property, others not. It seems, Mr. Chairman, this probably goes the wrong direction, because remember, a lot of our property tax is going to local communities. I mean, a substantial portion, you see $340,000 of this is a shift out of the school foundation program. So first and foremost, we're just one pocket to another. We're taking it from school foundation program. This is effectively the equivalent of an appropriation of $340,000 from the school foundation program to game and fish. That's the net effect. We can talk around how and why, but that's what's happening. But at the same time, and that's state government money, we'd pay both bills anyway, probably, although Game and Fish raises their own money, where school foundation program comes out of the mill levy. But one of the challenges we have a tremendous amount of government buildings, land, resources, real property around the state that doesn't pay taxes, but needs to be served, right? We complain about this all the time when the feds do this to us. We ask for a payment in lieu of taxes. We want recognition that it costs an awful lot of money to have public land in the state of Wyoming. We have to be responsible for it, but we don't have the full resources to account for it. That applies to state land too. It's the same thing. When you have state-owned resources in your community, you have to provide the services as the county and the city to afford the upkeep for them. If these are houses, these houses need to have fire service available. They probably need the county sheriff to exist and serve them. Just the same. It doesn't cost less because the state owns the building. In fact, on many occasions, it costs more if they're specialized buildings. And again, this is a much larger problem. There's no question that we have many agencies with vastly more resources where you've got a disproportionate burden on the community that's uncompensated for. But, Mr. Chairman, to me, this just looks like a step in the wrong direction. If this were a bill which said, hey, we should actually be paying all of our local property taxes equivalent to a PILT that we want from the federal government, we should be doing that for our local communities, that's a bill I could probably get behind, right? That's going the direction we needed to go, where we recognize that our agencies cost our communities money. The state resources cost our cities, towns, and counties money to operate. And this is one more instance of taking that away. So while, you know, the school foundation side of it, left pocket to right pocket, state dollars to state dollars, you know, that might be a bit of a wash. It isn't a wash down at the county and community level. They take a hit based on policies like these, and obviously this is a relatively small amount, but this seems like the wrong direction to be going, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Case, do we want to come back to you before we go back to the sponsor? Oh, let's go Case, Hicks. Sorry, Senator Hicks, be patient.
Or
Finish your thought. I cut you off.
Only that we have lots of businesses in Wyoming, Mr. Chairman, that find the need to have housing for their employees. And they pay taxes on that housing. It's a choice. It might be a convenient choice for the agency to provide the housing, but it's a choice. And alternatively, they could hire people, pay them more wages, and their the housing benefit, they get their own house. We're getting the same problem. We have hospitals in the state that own houses for their staff, regular houses in a residential neighborhood owned by a government-owned hospital, and they're off the tax rolls in that county. Now, I don't think that's right. I don't think housing is a government function. And I hope we'll resist this.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, if I can provide a little bit of edification, we can get those numbers broke out for you, but the single biggest taxes they pay are not necessarily on housing. It's their buildings. It's this Game and Fish headquarters that we have over here off the interstate. It's their headquarters and these regional offices in Teton County and Park County and Natrona County. They're paid property taxes on those. Almost every other branch of state, federal, and local government, we provide tax exemptions for those. You can go through the list of exemptions on here. The Wyoming school districts, Wyoming cities and towns, properties owned by counties, any property owned by the state of Wyoming, are all tax exempt. We don't tax any of those. This is the only entity that we currently tax all of their buildings. Now, the housing is a different issue. Maybe we want to pull housing out of this bill, but we're treating the department right now completely different than we do other entities. And keep in mind, these are not general funds. These funds are derived, these funds that are paying these property taxes are derived primarily from sportsmen and excise taxes on sporting goods and stuff. So it's not like we're taking general fund or local fund money and putting it in somebody else's pocket. You're taking this directly out of the sportsman pocket. This bill levels the playing field with cities, towns, counties, every state agency in the state of Wyoming that owns property. Now, we may want to exclude housing. That's up for debate. We can do that in a second amendment. But the bulk of this money is for their offices, for the purposes of doing their business as a state agency, no different than the Department of Health, the Department of Family Services, State Parks and Recreation, all of them own buildings all over the state of Wyoming. They don't pay property tax. This just levels the playing field for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. If we want to talk to housing, we can bring that as a second committee amendment and exclude housing from this exemption. But the big bulk of this funds is those large office buildings in your communities. I will have the numbers for each one of your counties if you would like for a second reading, and you can look at that at the impact on each one of your counties, not just the school foundation program. So I hope that provides a little more clarity in there. If we can move this on, we can address this issue of housing in a second reading amendment. I think that's a legitimate concern, but that's not the basis of what we're trying to accomplish here, is level the playing field for all of the large buildings associated with those property taxes.
Senator Landon, you want to wrap this up for us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick facts and figures. Appreciate the good senator from the South. In 2024, the department paid a total of $859,000 in property taxes. The regional offices accounted for $397,000 of those taxes. The game warden stations accounted for $134,000. Agriculture assessed commission-owned lands accounted for $187,000. The fish hatcheries, the bird farms, all the other properties and associated housing accounted for $139,000. The total department tax liability increase from 23 to 24 was $65,000. So, as the senator pointed out, this agency is one that pays taxes on all those regional offices that you stop by to get your license, you go there to get your AIS sticker. I love those, the ones that go on your boat. We're taxing these guys. So that's the issue of the bill. Points very well made on the other side of the room. Yes, this is taking away something and giving it to something else. But I'm just making the argument that I'm not sure that taxation should take place in the first place. I think it's a good bill to move forward. I agree with the senator. We can work on some things if there's an amendment or two. But a good consideration for us. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted Senator Landon to wrap that up, but I did see Senator Smith. We won't ignore you.
Mr. Chairman, I did vote for this in committee, but I want to commend the good senator from Albany County and Fremont County. You've changed my mind. We're picking winners and losers here. This is not about helping the hunters, or it's about, really what it does is it does hurt our local communities and sucks money away from them. That's just, I have to concur with that, because it's a small amount, but it's not a wash. It's not just a sleight of the hand. It actually does affect our local communities, and I'm going to be against this. Thank you very much for your arguments. They were great.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up unless Senator Landon, as chair, do you want to comment any further? Okay, call for the question. Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that to do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 99. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Senate File 99 is passed the committee of the whole. Senate File 14. Oh, hold on. Just a minute. Senator Driscoll,
Privilege of the floor.
please do.
Fellow senators, please join me in welcoming Wyatt and Joy Agar. Wyatt was 17 to 20 senator, one of the better senators for a long, long time, did a lot of great stuff. He left us to follow his wife and the kids on a rodeo trail and run a feedlot. He has Durbin Creek Herefords, which is a premier Hereford bull outfit. Just sold a set of my calves out of Washakie Feeders, his feedlot. He's outstanding at what he does. Desperately missed out of the Senate, and thank you very much for your service, including keeping the Pioneer Home open in Thermopolis. I kind of credit you personally for that. So please welcome.
Senator Agar, do you want to take Senator Jones's mic here for a minute and say something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's amazing, the faces change, but the work of the body stays the same. And so it's fun to sit on the sidelines and watch you guys. I just want to congratulate you on the job that you're doing. Thank you for serving.
We welcome both of you back to the Senate. Thank you. And as I recall, you did well with the Pioneer Home and did a lot of work on the Appropriations Committee as well. Thank you, Senator. All right, next bill up for our consideration, Senate File 14. Please read it in.
Senate File 14, Wyoming Imagination Library Program, an act relating to education sponsored by the Education Committee. It was referred to committee number 4, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Olson, Rothfuss, Schuler, and Scott. No, Senator Brennan, Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Senator-
Was re-referred to committee number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Driscoll, Guru, and Salazar. No, Senator Smith, excused, Senator Larson. Senator Salazar, Chairman.
Senator Schuler, please proceed and give us some correction on the amendment you have as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 14 do pass. And there is an amendment, if you would please read that in.
Please read it in.
Senate File 14, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 5, line 22, delete.
Senator Olson, were you going to take it from there? Give us direction both on the bill and the amendment as you proceed.
I was just stretching, but I can do it. That's
Oh.
okay. No, I'm
Don't
just,
stretch. I'll put
Mr.
you to
Chairman,
work.
I'm just kidding. It's me. All right, committee, I bring you the Senate File 14, which is a product of the Joint Education Interim Committee. This is what's known as the Wyoming Imagination Library Program. So imagine, if you will, a book in every child's possession. That's exactly what this bill does. It creates, well, let me start by giving you the purpose of it. On page 2, subsection B outlines the purpose of the Wyoming Imagination Library Program, which is to promote the development of a comprehensive statewide initiative for encouraging children from birth to 5 years of age to develop a love of reading and learning. So how it works is that this bill directs the Department of Education to coordinate with a nonprofit entity qualified under Section 501c3 of the IRS Code to promote and encourage reading by children in the following ways, which start on page 3. The first thing that it does is it provides at least one age-appropriate book to each registered eligible child, and again, that's from ages 0 to 5, and they receive that annually. The other purpose is to promote a statewide development of county-based affiliate programs that they partner with, and advance and strengthen the county-based affiliate programs to increase enrollment. They develop a public awareness campaign to promote the program and ensure the public is aware of the opportunity to register eligible children and receive the free books from the program. To administer the program with a funding match between the local affiliate and the Department of Education. And then lastly, on the bottom of page 3, to solicit donations, gifts, and other funding to financially support the program. On page 4, subsection D specifically tells us that this is a 50-50 match between the local affiliate county-based program and the Department of Education. Bottom of page 4 is the creation of the account. So in this legislation, we are creating the Wyoming Imagination Library Program account. That account will hold money that's appropriated from our general fund to this program. It will hold money that is the 50% match from the county-based affiliate program. They're required to provide their match for the program to operate in the county directly to the Department of Education. So it holds those funds as well. And then lastly, this program account will hold funds that may be grants, gifts, transfers, bequests, or donations. And if we turn over to page 5 of the bill, that continues the account creation. Bottom of the page is section 2. Here is the appropriation of the bill. This bill appropriates from general fund $320,000. And then this is where the amendment comes in, Mr. Chairman. So I believe the amendment's been read in? Yep, I'll move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 14. Do ask for your favorable consideration. My good senators, what this amendment does is strikes the language Wyoming Imagination Library Program and inserts basically Department of Education for the purpose of this program. And the whole purpose of that amendment is just to make it very clear in our legislation that the general fund appropriation is not going to
some third-party entity, but it is in fact going directly to the Department of Education. So that was just some clarifying language.
Okay, discussion on the amendment, discussion on the amendment. Call for the question on the amendment. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 14, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Amendment's passed. We're back on the bill. Go ahead, Senator.
That's the end of the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'll just note a few things. One is that there are currently 21 statewide programs like this operating in the United States, so we'll become one of those programs that is operating, providing one book. And I said per year, but I want to correct that. It's one book per month for the child ages 0 through 5. And,
Question.
Sorry, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman. One last thing, just so we're clear on what the appropriation is, it is for the books and the mailing of the books. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Questions on Senate File 14, Wyoming Imagination Library Program. Questions or discussion? Questions or discussion? Mr. President, are you up for that? Okay, Mr. President, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against, I was against this during the Education Committee. I just wanted to share my concerns with this idea. I think this is something that should be done in the private sector and stay in the private sector. You start mixing, in this case, a 501c3, and it's just a 501c3, a specific charity from good old volunteer state, that's as far as I'll take it. Best intentions, yes, that's great, but boy, we start going down a slippery slope with these types of ideas, and just pump the brakes on this if you would. I'd like to hear some more debate on this, and if this is something we really want to do, or if it's really a good idea, and think about this, because this is, I don't know. I have a lot more to say, but I just wanted to start the conversation here and urge some caution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Larson, and then to Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if I read in the bill somewhere, do the counties have to put something into this, or the school districts, or anything like that?
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, to continue the conversation, as we've looked into the literacy efforts and trying to improve what we're doing in our K-12 system in teaching reading, this idea came to the Joint Interim Committee. One of the things we have consistently heard is that getting the kids well prepared to go to kindergarten, ready for kindergarten, is well worthwhile. This is a small piece of that by trying to get the kids used to having books and reading books. And we're hearing, Mr. Chairman, that a fair number of the kids don't have that at home. It is currently being done on a private charitable basis, but they aren't able to reach nearly the whole population that needs it. So when this came to us in the Joint Interim Committee, I supported it because it looked to me like an inexpensive way for the state to improve what was being done already in the private sector and reap considerable benefits in terms of our ability to have success in the K-12 system. So it does expand the state spending, but it takes advantage of matching with the private funds to get a more complete program. And, Mr. Chairman, my judgment is that it is well worth the relatively small appropriation given the scope of the benefits here. So I would urge adoption of the bill.
Okay. Let's go to Senator Boner, and then we'll come back to you, Senator Olson, to wrap it up. Go ahead, Senator Boner. Oh. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say I'm familiar with the program in general because we currently benefit from it, at least in my neck of the woods up north. So piggybacking off of what my colleague from Bates Creek said, just what is the extent of the current use of this program throughout the state? How many, I believe it's school districts, if I could maybe endeavor to answer my colleague from up in the basin, at least in my neck of the woods, it seems to be associated with the local school district. But how extensive is this program already in the state, given the fact that there is a current 501c3 doing this work? And a second question I had regarding another point from my friend from Bass Creek, just because you get the book, and this may be coming from personal experience, does not necessarily mean that you end up reading it. It's going to be up to the parents to ensure that they actually read to their kids and they begin to receive the benefits of having that book in the house. So is there any studies done, any data demonstrated to the committee that shows that this program that is already extensively used in the private sector has produced positive results along literacy lines?
Thank you. We're going to have the Senator Olson wrap it up. I guess we got some more people before we come back. Let's go Senator Schuler and then Senator Land and then back to Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to answer the good senator's question about counties being on the hook for this, it's only if they choose to be. They have to become a county affiliated program in order to be a part of it. So if they choose to do that, then they would be part of that 50-50 match. And it was interesting to me, I hadn't heard much about this. I started doing a little bit of research on it. The states that have this program have done really well, and it really hits our low-income little kids, probably those families, more than anybody else, because, majority of us can go out and buy books for our kids and grandkids, no problem. But I tell you what, I do deliver some meals to Meals on Wheels occasionally, when I have a chance to volunteer, and I go into homes and I see no books anywhere, whether it be grandparents, aunts or uncles that are raising kids. So I think this program does have some impact. It does seem like, as the good senator from Bass Creek said, it's around 300,000-ish, but once that account is created and it's there, then the county match, it's a 50-50 deal, and it's done once that account is up and running. And so I think it's worth it, and as the good senator said, our literacy is an issue that we are really going to try to work hard on with our younger kids, particularly in those first 5 years of their life. If we can get books in their hands. We did have one testimony from one mom who was from another state, who said her kids had been a part of this program, and she had a statement that one of her kids wrote that was just amazing. It really kind of turned me on to the fact that this is a program that's worth taking a look at.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I kind of feel like I'm standing up against apple pie here. I'm all for literacy and I'm all for the little guys, but I find myself about in the same position as the good senator from Sheridan County. We already have wonderful programs in place, and my neighbor right across the street is the director of our library there in Natrona County. We're so lucky. The programs that they have are outstanding, and they target our low-income folks, people whose kids maybe aren't able to have as many books as maybe others. But I'm gonna sure listen and learn, but I might have trouble getting there on this one. It feels like maybe this is money that we could support our libraries with. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I'm not a big fan of this. It increases government spending, government involvement in education. We're usually in the top 3 in the country per pupil in spending, and I think we need to kind of come down from that. Utah, Idaho, they spend half per student and get effectively the same test results. So I don't think we need to get more government involvement or more spending in education. Thank you.
Okay, we're trying to bring it back to Senator Olson. Let's do that. Whoops. You folks in the far corners, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't trying to hide, but I know it's hard to see behind the screen. So I'm just curious, this is going to be a program, and so this biennializes and goes into the standard budget. So it's just cooked in. This will be the only time you'll ever see this increase in expenditures, and because it biennializes, you can double the numbers and figure out what that is, and goes into the Department of Education's budget. So that's one thing. the other thing, why are we now using general fund dollars to fund an education program through the Department of Education? We have this whole other section of our budget called the School Foundation Program, and those education programs are funded out of that, not the general funds. I'm just, why did the committee decide to start using general funds? And if this, and just a discussion is I don't know how successful the program, but this biennializes, goes into their standard budget. You'll never see this again, and just the rationale behind that.
Senator Scott, we're gradually getting back to you. Senator Olson, be patient.
Mr. Chairman, on the issue of which fund we're using, this is a preschool program, so it is arguably outside the purposes of the K-12 system. And for that reason, we thought it's better to use the general fund than school foundation fund, so there isn't any question about that. I believe we've done that in some other things. So it has major impacts on the K-12 system, but the recipients here are by and large younger than we can reach under the way the Constitution's written with the K-12 system, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recall during the Education Committee hearings that we didn't get an answer as to who gets to decide the content of these books and who oversees what types of books are being sent out. I think it was pretty much a given that there was going to be said charity that is going to pick the books, but trust us, they're going to be fine, they're going to be age appropriate. But here again, when you're tying charity and government and marrying those two together, a private charity organization, one of them, that's handpicked, but we're putting it in the Green Book, so it's there, like the good senator from Bag said, that we'll never see this money again, it'll be biennialized in the budget. This is apple pie, but this is a lot more serious than apple pie. These types of decisions we make on bills like this that seem innocuous tend to have consequences and often are hard to get rid of, because then how are you going to strip it out of the green books because you hate kids, right? It's not going to happen. It's there forever. So I caution, you know my stance on business and government coming together, public-private partnerships, I hate that word. This is the same thing, but with a private charity organization. So let's be careful. I think let charities do charity work, let government do government work. We've got libraries that can do this, and those are public funds. Therefore, everything's clean and above board. I would urge to resist this bill. Thank you.
Senator Olson, want to close it out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am the messenger of this legislation. I want that to be clear. I was not there during the interim when it was crafted. So here I am. Although some of us may not like the terminology private-public partnership, I think it's important that it's framed that way, because that is what this is. This is not government doing what the private sector should do. It's a partnership between the private sector and government to accomplish a common good. K-3 literacy is a major issue in Wyoming. You've got to start somewhere. This program does have measurable results. We know that 90% of a child's brain is developed by age 5, so the critical time to intervene is the ages 0 to 5. State-by-state data from this particular program operating in 21 other states has shown a 29% increase in children ready for kindergarten over a 28 years of collecting data. So there's your apple pie. At the end of the day, I'll just say this. Just vote your conscience on this. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that to do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 14, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay? No. Nays have it. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. Are we ready to do a count here? Just give a little patience, folks.
Come on, Barry, this is for the
kids.
Ayes 7. All those opposed, please stand.
Why do you hate children?
More than 7. Serious? Request for roll call, go ahead. Senator Case?
We adopted a rule several years ago that when a bill fails in committee of the
yeah,
whole,
roll
we take
call.
a roll call so that the
That's it.
public knows who voted which way.
Okay.
And bills have been resurrected on the roll call after failing a standing committee.
Yeah, having failed a roll call pursuant to Senate Rule 6.5, having failed a standing division vote, a roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll. There you go.
Roll call vote, Senate File 14, Committee of the Whole. Anderson?
Excused.
Excused. Barlow? Aye. Boner? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? No. Driscoll? No. French? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones and Jones? No. Kolb excused. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? No. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 14, 6 aye, 23 no, 2 excused.
Senate File 14, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to Senate Rules 6.5A, is deemed indefinitely postponed. The next bill up for our consideration is Senate File 29.
Senate File 29, Firearm Hold Agreement, Limited Liability, an act relating to civil procedure sponsored by the Transportation Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Brennan, Cooper, and Pappas. Excused, Senator Cole. Senator Pappas, Chairman.
Senator Pappas, go ahead and work in what you want us to do with the amendment along the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that I do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 29. There is a standing committee amendment. I ask to be read in.
Please read in the amendment.
Senate File 29, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 1, after.
Senator Pappas.
Well, I'm looking for my presenter, but he's not here, so.
It's all yours.
I guess I'll take it again. Mr. Chairman, yes. Okay, so Senate File 29 is a product of, again, of your. Oh, I move. Yeah. Thank you. I move Senate File 29, Firehold Agreement, Limited Liability, and ask for your approval. So, again, this file is a product of your Joint Interim Committee. The intent of this file is to limit the liability for people who have a firearm hold agreement. Veterans and military member suicide rates continue to be significant in Wyoming. This bill would limit the liability for a holder of voluntarily placed firearms who gives firearms back to the original owner and if something like a suicide happens. So the idea is to encourage people or businesses to accept offered firearms even when the owner acknowledges mental health issues. So research shows it takes 5 or 10 minutes between thinking about suicide to attempting it. Suicidal thoughts subside just as quickly. So safe storage practices increases the time it takes for a person experiencing suicidal thoughts to access the lethal item. Wyoming is ranked highest among suicide rates in the country from 2018 to 2021, and firearms were used in 72% of all suicides in Wyoming. Wyoming veteran suicide rates are almost 3 times the national average. So basically, this bill allows for an agreement for someone who wants to surrender their firearm to a friend, to a colleague, because they recognize that there may be a problem with themselves. Yet after they request the firearm back and the person who is holding them under that agreement would give it back, should that person then continue to commit suicide, it limits the liability of the person that held the firearm agreement. So it's pretty simple, straightforward. The agreement can be an oral or written agreement, as you can see on page 2. And so any person that takes possession of the firearm, owner's lawfully possessed firearm, again, firearm that's lawfully possessed, at the owner's request, holds the firearm for an agreed period of time, and then returns the firearm to the owner according to the terms of the agreement. So should something happen, we want to limit the liability of that person. The reason why is people will, if they are liable, people will not be doing this, will not accept that liability, and will not take that firearm away from a person who probably shouldn't have it. So that's the bill in a nutshell. Stand for questions.
You moved the amendment, correct?
Oh, yes, I forgot the amendment. Can I, we had did we have it?
Go ahead and
read
read it in.
Senate File 29, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 1, after.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you. I move the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 29. And all it does is, if you look in line 1, line 1 says providing liability. We're inserting the words providing immunity from liability. That was just a typo that was missed.
Discussion on the amendment? Question on the amendment. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 29, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nays. The amendment is passed. We're back on the bill. Anything else you'd like to add to the bill?
That's the bill. I'll take questions.
Further discussion on Senate File 29, Firearm Hold Agreement Limited Liability. Any further discussion? Oh, Senator Nethercutt, go ahead, sorry. And then we'll go to McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for the committee. You know, we're interchanging words there of liability limitations and no liability, and then we're granting immunity. Those actually have different meanings in the law. And so I think we'll come back to that. I just want to draw your attention to that issue. I find the circumstances of a firearm hold agreement to be concerning, since it's an oral agreement or a written agreement. And this oral agreement can provide full immunity for all actions to someone who has admitted to being a danger to themselves and potentially others. And so I understand the purpose of this bill is to provide tools in the toolbox for the possession of firearms from what evidently is a military member who's suicidal, but really this applies to anyone and isn't limited to military members or veterans. And it isn't limited to suicide, but it would provide full immunity for homicide as well. So under this scenario, this is what I see, that the suicidal subject agrees to give his guns to his friend, because the friend comes over because the wife calls, the friend takes the guns, and he says, yeah, you can have my firearms. Great. Now they have a firearm hold agreement, this thing that we created in statute. During this time, he's fighting with his spouse, and he wants to hurt himself and maybe hurt his spouse. And then 72 hours later, he calls his friend and he's like, you know what? I'm all better now. She's awful. I want my gun back. What do? You have to give it back. That's the agreement. He may be homicidal. He's indicated things to you that he might kill his wife. You now have immunity. I mean, I appreciate the firearm protections, I appreciate these concerns, but I think it may be going a bridge too far, and the concept is great, but it really goes into a place that I think may not be considering homicide, a homicidal behavior as opposed to just suicide, as opposed to the significance of when one breaches this oral agreement, when one is in a state of crisis. And so I think there's a lot more maybe to work on. Again, and I'm not trying to be diplomatic here by saying it's a good start. I think it is a good start. I think there are people who are hesitant to get involved when someone is exhibiting signs of suicide or even homicide and don't get involved, and that results in really bad consequences. But I don't think this quite gets us to where we need to be and doesn't encourage a culture of personal responsibility.
Senator McEwen, were you standing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been in this situation before with a friend. I didn't tell anybody I took his guns, and I wouldn't. Who's going to be there to enforce this? And why don't we throw rope in there, knives, pills? Could you come to my house and build a rubber room and tie me down? I don't even know how you'd enforce this. It just seems like huge government overreach, and I would agree with the senator from Laramie County. It gets rid of personal responsibility and ownership of what they're doing. If you give them the weapon back and they use it to do themselves in, that just happened. I don't even see how you trying to help could ever be liable. And I'm not sure it doesn't fall under the Good Samaritan Act also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion? Let's go back to Senator Pappas. We had this amendment too. Did we get that taken care of? Yeah. Okay. Late in the afternoon. Go ahead. You're on.
I'm not.
Go ahead.
There we go. Thank you. You know, I don't know the difference, legal differences. I'll have the legal minds discuss it with the good senator from Laramie County about immunity versus liability. This was text that was drafted by the legal minds at the Wyoming Military Department. And so I would have to defer to them to discuss this with the good senator from Laramie County. If we need to put some sideboards on it or tighten it up, you know, I'm certainly, you know, amenable to that. Yeah, it's probably correct. This is probably happening all the time. Good senator from the north of me. You know, if you've done it before, then you know, I'm sure this happens all the time and people don't know it. But apparently there's been an issue, or the department wouldn't have brought it to our attention, and we wouldn't have worked it over the interim. I think that, that there could be a liability issue, and, you know, you're trying to help a friend out. You give the firearms back, and something bad should happen. Should you be held liable for another person's actions just because you hold their firearm? Probably not. Whether you need in statute protection, I guess that's up to the body to decide. So anyhow, just bill that we worked in committee seemed very logical to us, logical to the Wyoming Military Department. Leave it up to the body to decide whether it's needed or not. Thank you.
Ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Pappas's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 29, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Senate File 29 has failed the Committee of the Whole. Standing division being called. All those in favor say aye, or stand. Hold for the count. All those opposed? Let me see that number again so I can announce it. 4. All those opposed? More than 4. All right. Pursuant to Senate Rule 6.5, having failed a standing division vote, a roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 29, Committee of the Whole, roll call. Anderson excused. Barlow? No. Boner? Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? No. Driscoll? No. French? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kolb excused. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Smith? No. Steinmetz? No. Boner, excused, Mr. Chairman?
Excused.
Excused. And President Beitman? No. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 29, 2 aye, 26 no, 3 excused.
Senate File 29, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to SR 65A, is deemed indefinitely postponed. The next bill up for our consideration is Senate File 31. Please read it in.
Senate File 31, Boards and Commissions, Veterans Ex Officio Members, an act relating to boards and commissions, sponsored by the Transportation Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 8, which turned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Brennan, Cooper, and Pappas. Excuse, Senator Kolb. Senator Pappas, Chairman.
Senator Pappas, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that I do so for, with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 31. And for an explanation, I'll just keep it here with me again. This is a simple bill as well out of your Transportation Interim Committee. The meat of the bill, if you'll turn to page 2 on lines 4 through 8, basically what we are doing is the Veterans Commission will be able to provide two names to the governor, or provide names to the governor for ex officio members of the University Board of Trustees and the Wyoming College Commission to serve only in an ex officio capacity. So these will be members of those two organizations. Veterans are on our campuses. There's a lot of veteran issues that come before the university and all our community colleges. So it was thought that it would be good to have the voice of veterans on the various boards and, as trustees. However, they would be ex officio non-voting members. So with that, I'll take questions.
Okay, questions on Senate File 31? We are on Senate File 31, Boards and Commissions, Veteran Ex Officio Members. Any further discussion on Senate File 31? So go ahead, Senator Rothfuss. Oh.
Chairman, we have a special privilege of the floor for Representative Jones, or Senator Jones, before her husband leaves the room.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can make that. Senator Jones, go ahead before you lose a husband from the building.
He's right there.
Okay, I just wanted to introduce my husband.
Wait, well, now do it. Go ahead.
Sweetwater County Commissioner Taylor Jones. We just returned from the inauguration of our 47th president. It was an amazing experience. We were able to meet with some of our U.S. senators, talk about some state issues, and also tour Senator Barrasso's new office in the U.S. Capitol. So please, warm welcome to Taylor.
Sweetwater Commissioner Jones, thanks for joining us. Very good. Okay, we're back on the bill. And Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, a couple questions. And specifically with the University of Wyoming, you know, what wasn't mentioned was including the director of the Wyoming Community College Commission. And that just seems a little bit stray relative to the purpose of the bill. And I'm not even saying it's necessarily a bad policy, but it wasn't mentioned in the discussion. It seems like it's a really substantial issue, and I was curious what the discussion is. Was this something that was advocated for by the Community College Commission to the committee to include the director of the Wyoming Community College Commission on it? Or actually, alternatively, my apologies, actually, it's in the language above, and it's an amendment that's carrying it down. I now see that, and that wasn't explained, and I get it now. So the new language is Romanet 2. My apologies for that question. One of the concerns that I have, so the second point, one of the concerns I have really is just growing the size of any committee and increasing its size with ex officio members. And I'm not saying that these aren't important voices, but I guess I would say that there are a lot of important voices. So there are a lot of important voices for the University of Wyoming's board to hear from. There are a lot of important voices for all of our boards and commissions to hear from. But you have to be thoughtful about how many members are present. And we all know that as you increase the size of a board or a committee, that it becomes more and more challenging to do the work when you have so many voices. So is this something that was advocated for by the University of Wyoming Board of Trustees? What was the feedback and discussion there? And, you know, is this the end of the list, or are we all going to figure out what organization that we feel passionate about and advocate for and have an ex officio member? Because again, the University of Wyoming is engaged in many different areas, industries, sectors, communities, veterans, et cetera. And it seems like it would be a little bit unwieldy. So while I don't disagree with the intent of this, I'm a little concerned with the real world implication of continuously adding ex officio members and decreasing the efficiency of the board. So a little discussion on that. My apologies for misreading the first part about adding the director of the Community College Commission. I now understand why that was done.
Okay. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly support the intention of the bill, but I am sitting back here thinking in my mind about that community college commission versus all the boards out across. There are 8 boards of these colleges, which seemed to me that that might be a more appropriate level if you want to have some impact on some given campuses. But we'll think about that, Mr. Chairman. The commission is a pretty high-level oversight group, and I'm just wondering. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion before we take it back to Senator Pappas? Further discussion, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This wasn't forwarded to us by the trustees or the Wyoming Community College Commission. It was a product of the Veterans Commission. And so, however, there was no, certainly the University of Wyoming and the Wyoming Community College Commission did not object to having an ex officio member added to their board. At least I don't recall that in committee in the interim. So I don't think it's a heartburn for them. Yes, there are many folks that would like to have a voice on our commissions, both the college, Community College Commission and the trustees of the University of Wyoming. But the veterans are a pretty large and a substantial group. And I think that it's not, it is probably very beneficial to have that voice. We are looking at just the commission and the trustee. The governor certainly could point the same individual to both boards. I think the Wyoming Military Department may think that's actually a good idea, but the governor may appoint 2 separate people, one for the trustees and one for the commission. It's not intended that each college have a ex officio board member. I think that would be up to each individual college to do that if they so wish to have a veteran on their boards. All this does is provide an individual on the commission and on the board of trustees at the University of Wyoming. I hope that helps answer the question.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Ready for a question? Question be called. All those in favor of Senator Pappas's motion, when the committee of the whole rises to report that to do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 31. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
Division.
Division being called. All those in favor stand. Those opposed, please stand. Seventeen, Senate File 31 has failed. Committee of the Whole, pursuant to Senate Rule 6.5, having failed a standing division vote, roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 31, Committee of the Whole, roll call vote. Anderson, excuse. Barlow? No. Boner, excuse. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? No. Driscoll? No. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? Aye. Jones? No. Kolb excused. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman? No. Closing vote? Salazar? Salazar, aye to no. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 31, 11 aye, 17 no, 3 excused.
Senate File 31, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to Senate Rule 65A, is deemed indefinitely postponed. The next bill for our consideration will be Senate File 21. Before you read it in, I'll just share a privilege of the floor with you for a moment. Chief Clerk and I were reflecting on the days when I used to have to tap on the plexiglass to get her attention, and we would talk through a little hole down here by the Buffalo. Those were the days, yes. Okay. Reading clerk, read it in.
Senate File 21, Ban on Cell Phone Use in Schools, an act relating to education, sponsored by Senator Schuler, was referred to Committee Number 4, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Olson, Schuler, and Scott. No, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Senator Schuler, what is your pleasure? And please acknowledge there is an amendment. Give us some direction along the way. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 21 do pass. And if you would go ahead and read that amendment in, please.
Please read it in.
Senate File 21, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 2, delete.
You want to make a motion on
Yeah,
the
I think I'll
amendment?
go ahead and move the amendment. I'll move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 21 and ask for your favorable consideration. It's a very simple amendment. On page 2, we just changed one word from adopt policies to prohibit. We changed that to restrict. It was more just wordsmithing more than anything else. Maybe doesn't sound quite as mean. And then the other part of the amendment just changes the date from July 1st, 2025 to September 1st, 2025. If this bill moved forward, we felt like, we wanted to give the schools plenty of time to not only get a policy in place, but be able to have public meetings so that people could, opine on whether or not they like the policy that they came up with. So with that, I would ask for favorable recommendation on the.
Discussion on the amendment, discussion on the amendment. There being none, all those in favor of the amendment, this is Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 21. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The amendment is passed. We're back on the bill, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So actually, even before I retired as an educator, we were seeing really a lot of problems with cell phones and students. I didn't have any problem necessarily in my classes. I guess I was kind of mean. They just knew not to bring them, but it's just gotten worse. And I've had people talking to me all around the state about it, saying, we've got to do something. And I do kind of always like to err on the side of local control and, let's don't be, putting our thumb on things, but it's getting out of hand. And there have been about 20 states now that have actually gone and passed some legislation. And so I started doing some research on what the other states have done. Some of them have been very restrictive. There are a couple states that have actually restricted any social media, and some of them have restricted phones altogether in their buildings. I don't necessarily want to go that route, but I just want to give you a little history. First of all, we used to have the flip phones. There wasn't as big a deal with the phones. Once the iPhone came in, and that came in at about 2010, then you started getting Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and all these other things. And what we found out is that most students are on social media, whether it be YouTube or gaming or one of those game platforms, most of the time during the day. And the data shows that in-school screen time ranged from 45 minutes to 6.5 hours. That's a whole school day, basically, whether it's TikTok or whatever it is. So if you count in the school day, the data shows that a typical, now this is 8 to 12-year-olds have 5.5 hours of screen time a day. 13 to 18-year-olds have about 8 hours a day of screen time. That's nationwide. And in 2023, they did a survey of students, and more than half of them are on social media at least 4 hours a day. Quite often that's at school. And what it's done is it's caused increased anxiety and depression, increases in suicide, eating disorders, you name it. Public schools are seeing all kinds of problems with not only those things, but an increase in cyberbullying, pornography. They stay up all night on their phones, so they come in tired. So you've got negative neurological effects, emotional distress, body dissatisfaction, and really a loss of in-person socialization and peer relationship building. So basically, even the US Surgeon General has come out and said that the harmful impacts of social media use and the negative effects on academics and mental health, it's really affecting our schools. So what this bill does is it requires our public schools to develop a policy that prohibits or restricts cell phone use just during instructional time. So if a school district wanted to let their students have their cell phones before school or during lunch or passing time, they could decide on that, and if that's what they chose to do, that's fine. Like I said, some places are going with bell to bell. Some places are being more restrictive than this. But the bottom line is that, and, you know, the districts that don't have anything in place right now, some districts are starting to move that direction already. I appreciate the governor and the superintendent of instruction for coming out strongly about this same thing, but, you know, the teachers end up being the ones that end up being the cell phone police. And there's some teachers that have told me that some of the kids just say, we're not gonna put them away. And so then, of course, you've got the discipline issues and whatnot. It's just an increasing power struggle. So, you know, it does, I think it's affected our failure rates. I think it's affected our attention span of kids. And so not only that, you see some conflict and hate speech. Kids are doing things on phones to other kids that are just, it's atrocious. And so this bill, like I said, it will include local control, because those teachers, or excuse me, those districts can decide how they'd like to enforce it, how they'd like to, you know, if it's a first offense, this is what we would do, or a second offense, or so on and so forth. And again, some schools that are trying this kind of as a pilot program, I've talked to a couple of them in the state, they're having really good luck with it, but some of them are allowing to keep the cell phones in the lockers. Some of them have pouches that when they come in the classroom, they get to put those in the pouch. Some let the phones stay on the person or in their backpacks, but they cannot have them out. So again, the states that have done this and the districts that are doing this, they're seeing better social interactions with their peers, better focus, and higher achievement. And I mean, all we're asking for is, you know, 45 or 50 minutes a day where they can actually focus on history or science or math or whatever it is. So it's not an atrocious ask, I don't believe. Again, there are exceptions in the bill. If you want to take a look at the bill, those students that may have health issues, I got a couple of emails from one parent that had a student that's diabetic and wanted to know if there were exceptions for that, and there is in the bill. So it has to be determined by a healthcare provider, or if they are on an IEP that would require them to have their phone or smartwatch, that's also in the bill. Cell phones would not be prohibited in the case of an emergency. So if there was an emergency, students obviously could use their phones or a response to a perceived threat of danger. So again, no later than, we had July 1st, now we're moving it to September 1st. Each school board will have those policies in place. Again, I think if we want to do one thing that will really affect our students positively, more than maybe anything else I think that we can do this year, it would be to push this bill forward. Student success is more than just our scores on a test. There's a lot of factors, I think, but if we really want our students to be more productive and more engaged as citizens later on, I think this is the one thing that we need to do to support. So with that, I'd ask for your support on this bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we're on Senate File 21, ban on cell phone use in schools. Any further discussion? Mr. President?
Oh, man. Oh, I just think back to my school days. If I would have brought a cell phone to school, I guess it would have been a bag phone. Maybe, I don't even think they existed back then. Trying to think what my teachers would have done. They first probably would have said, put that thing away or go to the principal's office. And if I wouldn't have, I can imagine one of my teachers probably would have smashed it into a million pieces, and that would have been that. And that would have gone to the principal's office and probably got suspended and kicked out of school for disobeying my teacher. So that brings me to the question, like, what's going on in schools if teachers don't have control of their classrooms, where if a kid's on their cell phone and being distracted,
why isn't the teacher doing something about it and saying, put that thing away or go to the principal's? Make it the principal's problem, and if enough teachers make it the principal's problem, the principal will make it the school board's problem, and the school board will do something about it. But going straight to the legislature, to me, seems a little bit odd, especially now we have an amendment that says you can not prohibit, but we'll just restrict them. So question on that, on just the dynamic of how things might have changed. I know I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but has K-12 education changed that much where teachers absolutely have no control of their classroom? That's question number one. Question number two is, you don't see anything about earbuds or whatever they're called. I know that's a big thing now. Kids have them in all the time. They're listening to music all day long, probably not even listening to the teacher anymore. Why isn't that included? If we're going to go here, why not go all the way? So was there any debate on that? And I'll stand at ease for some of my colleagues to jump in, but those are my two questions. Thank you.
Senator Hyde, did you stand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Echo those sentiments to a degree. I think that the intentions are good of this. I know it's a problem, but the upbringing of your children is still the responsibility of the parents. And I think that this bill coming to the legislature, as the good senator, the good president said, it further displaces the primacy of the parents. So I'm against this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know if there was any discussions with regard to safety. Some parents I have a 16-year-old, and reluctantly, and my wife gave our 16-year-old a cell phone for the purposes of safety. If something were to happen, we would want to know about it. Was there any discussion with regard to that, and specifically in relation to what this bill might do? So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Case, and then over to Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I think you probably recall how much of a problem this was for us when we were in school, because we had to bring landlines to school. And the wires, they got everywhere. It was just a mess. Oh, my. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we have school boards. We love our school boards, except when we don't. They can do a great job. They can learn what other school boards are doing with respect to policies about these devices. They can implement policies if that is a successful strategy to do so. We're not the school board. We're not the school board.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, so I think my colleague from Natrona County, the necessity to build may have hit it right on the head. And we've had some experiences in one of the school districts that I represent. And what we had was a number of parents that were irate that a teacher actually told those kids that they couldn't use a cell phone in the school. And so those parents came in and raised all living whatever with the principal, and then they berated the teacher. And so we have consequently a situation now that we have an experience, real world, where we have parents now that want those kids to have cell phones in those classrooms with unrestricted use. I wouldn't necessarily consider that good parenting. And then when it all rolls downhill, falls on the teacher, because the administrators don't stick up for the teachers that were trying to do the right thing, then that's when the legislature has to step in. And so in a perfect world, where teachers could actually say, no, you can't use your cell phone, and then the parents didn't come in and attack the teachers, and then the administrators didn't back the teachers, and then we have cell phones in the classroom. And that is a real-world example that happened in one of the school districts I represent. So when all those systems fail, it ends up down here in our lap. I don't disagree with everything. The simple fact is, folks, we're living in a different world. Sometimes parents have a different view of what should go on in the classroom and what's permissible content or not. And on occasion, you have administrations that then don't back up those first-line teachers that have to make those decisions, and so it's here.
Further discussion over to Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I was the no in the committee, and I had some concerns. I'd first of all say, though, this is a good bill in terms of really being thoughtful and trying to put together a balanced policy from the legislature on banning cell phone use, because you can see some excellent exception language that's provided to ensure that in cases of emergency it's covered, and that if you have a school district employee, they can authorize it. So there is a lot of balance here, and I don't want anyone to think that this is an overly onerous, ridiculously restrictive piece of legislation. But at the same time, at the end of our discussion, I was inclined to think that we still really don't quite have this down, Mr. Chairman, in terms of knowing what the best practices are yet. And we know that school districts are adopting different policies, and probably all of them are disastrous in some way, realistically, because it's new. So nobody's gotten this right. We certainly haven't seen anyone that has really hit the sweet spot. But to me, it seems like we still need to provide that flexibility for districts to hit that sweet spot and figure out what the best policy is for their community, to be able to take the local feedback, digest that local feedback, and then figure out what's going to work in their schools. And a diversity of policies is probably the right answer. You know, when I teach at the university, I want students to have their cell phones a lot of the time. I don't want them to spend their time on it playing around, but I want them to be looking things up. I want them to be using them as tools and engaging in both the class as well as the technology, right? Use them instead of exclude them. It's a great way to honestly keep people interested that want to be looking at their cell phone, candidly. But that doesn't always work. And we need a lot of dynamic flexibility. We need our school districts to be listening to the parents. And we did hear some, challenging examples from a privacy standpoint. We know that students need their cell phones, for example, if they have assisted insulin injector ports, right? Great new technology where you can have your cell phone regulating what your insulin levels are. So you've got a sensor and an injector typically located near your hip that's providing actively injection of insulin, and your cell phone is responsible for that. Well, obviously we're not going to take that away, and to be clear, this bill doesn't take that away. But what is allowed at that point, where there needs to be flexibility and the assurance that there's flexibility, whose business is it to be asking about why student X needs to have their cell phone all the time? And that's the type of confrontation that awkwardly happens at this point, Mr. Chairman, where the teacher is coming up and saying, well, why do you need your cell phone? The answer a lot of times, candidly, is none of your business. And that's a fair answer. It really is. For some reason, that parent thinks that kid needs to have their cell phone, and maybe you need an administrator at some point to bless it, but boy, it's just not as easy as it seems, where it's just kids not paying attention in the classroom, let's get rid of it. So all that to say, after hearing the testimony, I was left thinking that it's just not ready for a state law at this point in time. We need to keep working on it in our little engines of creations in our school district, and I think that's the best approach for this issue, which is an important issue, but we can leave this one up to school boards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, following on that, yes, you do need some room for the local school boards to adapt, but the place where you need it is in how do you implement this? And the bill does that, because there's numerous techniques for how you implement. And the bill, what the bill says, you need a prohibition, and then leads it up to school board how you implement that, and that's where there will be considerable experimentation. And let me say, I think that the example that the good senator from Baggs gave us is reflective of the real world, and you're just getting chaos in the classrooms. The districts try to do something about that. They do have a set of parents who are being frankly irresponsible, I think, but are causing the chaos. So you've got competing sets of parents you've got to deal with. And this bill will give those districts, which are many of them, that are trying to have restrict the cell phone use, have a ban on it. It will give them some extra backup that, okay, there's a state law that says we've got to do that. Because if you don't, you really are going to harm the results in schools because the chaos is getting to the point where the students really can't learn adequately. And it's been a major epidemic. Mr. Chairman, it's hit us extra hard recently, and this will move us down the road and start improving the quality of the instruction that we're getting in our schools, particularly at the high school and the middle school level. So I would urge passage of the bill.
Further discussion, we have two, let's go Steinmetz Jones in that order. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thinking about, I mean, if getting achievement in our schools was as simple as banning cell phones, wouldn't that be great? But I don't think it's quite that simple. And there are kids that are on court orders to have their phone with them 24/7 because of issues that are going on in their lives. And some of those parents that are saying, I want my child to have that cell phone, there might be a very good reason. So I'm very hesitant for the state to step in this regard. I just wondered if those issues were considered when this bill was taken into account. There's no doubt there are some issues, but my goodness, how many devices does the school provide that our kids are on all day long too? So there's a lot more to this. I wish the issues in education were this simple, but I don't think they are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, we had this discussion with the school districts in my part of the state, and they requested that they be able to make this decision themselves. They don't want it legislated, they want to make the decision. There are some teachers that embrace the use of cell phones, and there are apps that the kids can answer questions, and their answers show up on a screen. So there are ways to use it as an engagement tool. So let's let the schools decide themselves.
Further discussion over with Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I look through this bill, what I see in it is there's no punishment. There's no suggested punishment. So even if we put this bill into law, it's still going to go back to the school administrators. We're not suggesting they do anything. They get a decision whether they're going to suspend them, send them to cubes, on and on. So while it is kind of a feel-good bill, I just don't see what it really does other than put the onus back on the school districts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion, do we want to come back to the sponsor then? Senator Schuler. Oops, I'm sorry, I missed you. Senator Brennan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for this bill, I do think that we have had some great debate. I believe, though, that this bill does provide a good balance between asking the districts to have a cell phone use policy and also saying, hey, these are some exceptions that need to be in your cell phone use policy. There have been questions raised about, did we have discussions in committee about the safety, like what happens with the safety of the students in the schools is jeopardized, or maybe students need these cell phones for their safety. We did discuss those. I believe that we've got a lot of that is covered in this bill. And then my final thought on this too is we talk a lot about our teachers and how are we going to retain our teachers and how are we going to support our teachers. And if we're going to keep our teachers, they're going to be able to have to teach in the classroom. And we hear again and again from a lot of educators that the cell phones are a distraction and they're not able to teach. And I think if we're going to support our teachers, that we need to pass this, send a message to our districts that it's important that our teachers be able to teach without the distraction of today's technology. Somehow, I believe I'm one of the younger members in the body, and we did not have cell phones when I was in school, so somehow this body made it through high school, junior high, elementary school without cell phones, and we're here to tell the tale about it.
Okay, before we go back to sponsor,
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I appreciate the concern about this bill, and some of you know I personally limit my own access to the digital world in a flip type of way. And I don't think that's inappropriate. But I would say that this appears to me to be, if it were adopted, the 44th requirement we put on school districts. And I've been going back through those 43 prior ones, and there's lots of things that I'm going, why would we need to instruct a school board to do this? But apparently at some point we did. And there's 3 pages in the Green Book if you'd like to go look it up. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to support this on this committee of the whole, but I'm going to bring a limit. I'm going to bring a bill that says not prohibit or restrict, but adopt a policy regarding the use of cell phones during instructional time. I think that's what we're trying to do, is empower school districts. And if they want that empowerment, let's give them the authority to do it. Let's be explicit about it, just like we have 43 other times. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay, we're taking it back to the sponsor. Senator Schuler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great discussion. Again, I'm not one of those who generally likes to, let's put the hammer down, but in talking with a lot of teachers and administrators, I actually talked to 4 superintendents over in my corner of the state, 2 from large schools and 2 from smaller schools. Every one of them were in total support of this. They said that it's been difficult even in their own districts, because you'd have one principal that would say at this middle school they can have them, another teacher, another high school would say they couldn't, the other middle school maybe would say they could, and so you would have parents that would actually transfer their kids from one middle school to another because this one will allow cell phones and the other one doesn't. I had one superintendent tell me that 2 parents actually withdrew their kids from school when they decided to try a pilot program and said, if our kids can't have their phones 24/7, we don't want them in your school. So parents are part of the problem too, and that's where we can't, of course, fix that. But and also I just wanted to mention, I think one of the good senators talked about safety. There is a section in here on page 2 where it says an employee of the district, they can authorize the student to use a cellular telephone or smartwatch for safety issues. I actually had one parent, these are the only 2 negative emails that I got. One that had a student that was diabetic, and I, of course, allayed that fears of that mother. The other one said, my student has some emotional disabilities and really needs to have their phone. Could there be an exception for that? They really, really struggle. And and I said, yes, there is, I've written that into the bill. And so a parent could do that. So we've tried to allow everybody to have some access. And again, if this were to go forward, school districts would, like I said, they would have to have 3 readings within their own district to decide, so parents get to, say, hey, I like it, I don't like it, this is too restrictive, this is not. The only other thing that I really didn't get into too much detail, and I think the good president mentioned this, was that the earbuds. I know some of the states have outlawed those, or banned those as well. That's something I guess we could have a conversation about, but again, if they don't have the cell phones, I guess there's not a big issue with the earbuds, other than music that they're getting from I don't know where. But we understand that, students, it's a different time, than when we all grew up. They have their computer labs, they have Chromebooks, they have this, they have that. They have so much access to cellular devices that it's overwhelming. And if I just suggest, if you ever get a chance to read a book called The Anxious Generation, it talks about how we've just rewired our children. They don't get outside and play. They don't have communication with, they ask each other to the prom on their phones. They do everything on their phones. Not that that's a bad thing, but because of the fact that if you take a look at some of the data out there and you see the increases in the mental issues that we're having and emotional issues with our students, it is due to cell phones. So even though we can't do anything about them when they're home with their parents, that's their kingdom, we should be able to say in our schools, hey, for 50 minutes, we're gonna learn about math, we're gonna learn about science, and why can't we have that? And I know it just seems like we're the big boogeyman, by putting our thumb on them, but I think this is one of those bills that we need to do that. We need to make sure that our kids are getting the best possible potential to be, like I said, good students, to be good citizens. And when they're on their phones, 24/7, I don't think we're getting out of them what we need to get out of them. So I would hope that you would move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question?
Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 21. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. No. Chair is in doubt. Division. All those in favor, please stand. Ayes 11. Those opposed, please stand. Seventeen against. Pursuant to Senate Rule 6.5, having filled a standing division vote, a roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Roll call vote, Senate File 21, Committee of the Whole. Anderson excused. Barlow? Aye. Boner excused. Brennan? Aye. Aye. Case? No. No. Cooper? No. No. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter?
No.
No. Driscoll? No. No. French? No. Guru? No. No. Hicks? Aye. Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kolb excused. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen?
No.
No. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler?
Aye.
Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? No. Steinmetz? No. No. President Beitman? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 21, 7 aye, 21 no, 3 excused.
Senate File 21, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to Senate Rule 6.5A, is deemed indefinitely postponed. Next bill, there is no next bill. Madam Floor Leader. Let's find it. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Mr. President.
Wait, work. Senators, how about a round of applause for our incredible staff who just did the entire afternoon without a single break. We all have the opportunity to get up and walk around. They do not. Huge round of applause for our staff. I promise we won't do that again.
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 48, do pass. Senate File 36, do pass amended. Senate File 49, do pass. Senate File 57, do pass. Senate File 90, do pass amended. Senate File 19, do pass amended. Senate File 56, do pass. Senate File 59, do pass. Senate File 26, do pass. Senate File 27, do pass. Senate File 99, do pass. Senate File 14 failed to pass Committee of the Whole and was indefinitely postponed. Senate File 29 failed to pass Committee of the Whole and was indefinitely postponed. Senate File 31 failed to pass Committee of the Whole and was indefinitely postponed. Senate File 21 failed to pass Committee of the Whole and was indefinitely postponed. Senator Dockstader, Chairman.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Committee of the Whole report has been adopted. Thank you, Senator Dockstader, for your work today. Okay. Do we have any announcements or anything, Chief Clerk?
let's do some standing committee reports. I know it's getting late, but let's keep this bus moving for a while.
Mr. President, the following reports are dated January 21, 2025. Mr. President, Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 3, Mule and White-tailed Deer Separate Hunting Seasons. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Hicks, Jones, and Schuler. No, Senator Landon. Senator Landon, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 8, Protection Orders effective during appeal or review. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Crago, Crum, Hicks, and Olson. Excused, Senator Kolb. Senator Olson, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 39, Automatic Transfer of Automobile Title Upon Death. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Crago, Crum, Hicks, and Olson. Excused, Senator Kolb. Senator Olson, Chairman.
Madam Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move that we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025.
Okay, any committee announcements? Chairman Barlow. Let's see, where are you at? There you are.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet Wednesday, January 22nd, about 30 minutes after noon recess in room W110 to hear two bills. Our final interim committee bill, Senate File 74, Immunity for Drug Overdose Reporting, and then our first member bill, Senate File 89, Certificate of Need Repeal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman Barlow. Vice President Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 2 Appropriations will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We will continue the markup of the supplemental budget. We'll be in room 301. We will also be meeting upon noon recess, again in room 301 on marking up the supplemental budget. And members of the Senate, it's my intent that we will hopefully have this done by Thursday morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Education Committee Number 4 will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in room W110. We're going to continue with our charter school funding amendments, which is Senate File 73. We'll also discuss Senate File 98, School Board Trustees Party Affiliation, and Senate File 62, Restrooms in Publicly Funded Schools, if we have time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more announcements? Committees, you're doing good work. Oh, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for the senators to know and the public, I intend to every night have your Committee of the Whole schedule available shortly after we adjourn each evening, so you can look that up at night and prepare in your evenings for the following day to review and study your bills. Sometimes it's apparent that those bills aren't read in debate, and so it is helpful if you do just look at those bills before you get up and speak and read them. It will make us all look smarter, and you know how I feel about that. So, good senators, really great work today. Again, the list for tomorrow will be available here shortly this evening, subject to changes that will occur. I just want you to know changes will occur, but I'll give you a general outline of what bills we'll hear in the morning and the afternoon, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. You've heard our motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The Senate will stand adjourned till 10 a.m. tomorrow.